Hi Sam, how are you?
No, but at all. Sorry, I was concentrating on trying to go live on Facebook. Yes. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are
Yeah.
you keeping?
No, very keeping myself busy, hiding away from the little virus. But apart from that, it's been a great day. Where was I? Yeah, no, it's a great day. So it's oh yes, you're here. Can see you now. Okay, let me go to oh, okay. Oh, the live streaming is already gone on. Okay, let me see. Yep. Okay, let me just see what it says on the Facebook Live. So wow. Oh, yes. This morning I missed coming on, so I didn't see your new look because
Yeah.
we had an event this morning. The event with Yemi.
Oh yes, yeah. How did that
Yeah.
go?
Oh no, very well. Well received. Property people, they like to see someone that's buying properties expensive. So it was very impressive. Everyone loved the fact that it's 2 million, 4 million here and there. So it was very property people that like to see people spending money. Yeah, just good. Yeah, so it was good. Um, yeah, let me just see what we have here. Okay, let me see the live streaming. I think let me see. I'm not seeing it on. Let me see. Just give me 1 second. No, I'm not seeing it here. Okay, let me see where it is. At times with I'm sure you guys have this in the morning when you try and go live. At times with Zoom, you don't know. And oh, okay, it says preparing. Oh, let me see. Let me stop it and start it again. Facebook Live. Okay, so I hope that's going live now. And it just says preparing. But Jay, what I found out is that with Zoom, in the morning it's very easy to go. It's slightly easier to go live before the Americans come. But once the Americans come in to work, it gets very slow. I could only think it's probably a lot of traffic in the evenings.
Yeah,
Um,
we've experienced the same thing when we've run some evening courses or evening classes, even.
yeah, I was going to do this earlier, but since after the first event, I've been on the phone back to back. It's been crazy. Um, yeah, so it's been a great day at network auction for us. We had two lots. The one that I've been doing live from in East London is sold, and the client
Oh,
is
good.
very a lot higher than he expected. So the market is going. I had some in Bradford that they sold quite well, and there's some that were meant to be at auction next auction, but we seem to be agreeing prices on to have them all knocked down. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, yeah. So the market is it's happening.
No,
Okay,
people are having success, but it's um it's good to see that the auctions are still keeping a good beat on the marketplace. Very
abs-
important.
absolutely. So no, it's good. I think RT's tried to call me. I think she was working on a PowerPoint presentation, our own slide for tonight. But I think I'm just gonna. I've been so busy that I didn't pick up. I'm gonna improvise with the one in the morning. So let me pull that off, and then when I think we're getting quite a few people coming on now. Yeah, we did market this quite a lot in the morning to try and get everyone in. Um, and
I
yeah,
I put it in a couple of private WhatsApp groups as well, so hopefully that drew a bit of interest.
yeah, yeah. So that's good. Let me see who is here. Go ahead, people. Oh, well, no, it's up. It's not 7 o'clock yet. So, oh, okay. So it's not. Yeah. Oh, okay. Got the usual suspects are here. Uh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's give it a couple more minutes and see what's been happening today. Um, yeah. So now I didn't see your new look this morning. Good.
Yeah, I had to do something because it was getting ridiculous.
Yeah. I thought, it's for an auctioneer, it was looking quite, fitting the part of an auction expert. So need to look eccentric, which you're not, but I
Well,
thought,
there's still some facial hair on there, isn't there? So it's all right.
okay. So not sure if anyone wants to do some networking. We've got a few people that have come in. Let me see. Does anyone want to do some networking? Oh, okay. Let me see who's that. Yeah. Okay, Ranjit. Let me get them on. Okay. Um. Okay. Should I I'm going to just enable people that want to talk. Um, if anyone wants to talk, anyone wants to be enabled to talk for a bit of networking, just put your hands up so I don't enable someone that doesn't want to talk. If you want to talk, if you want to do some networking, please just put your hand up and I will enable you to have a quick chat with Jay. Okay. But not you, Ranjit. I don't think Jay want to have a chat with you.
I I always love a good chat with Ranjit.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to this
exactly,
being over, so I can so we can meet up and have our usual curry session. A good bit.
exactly. You can have
Yeah.
at the end when he goes to the bar, that's it. Okay, now I think he's no, he hasn't. I think he's not there. He didn't. I think most people have locked in and they maybe going to get a cup of coffee or something when they come back.
Cool.
Let me
That's a good point. Whilst we're waiting, I'll go grab a quick drink as well. I'll be 2 seconds, Sam.
Okay, that's good. Right. Yeah, I still can't see it coming live on Facebook. It just says preparing. Wow. Let me go back and then see. Let me stop it and then start again one last time before I give up. But at least it's recording anyway. We can then put it out later. But oh yeah. Oh, okay. We've got a few hands up now. Oh, just the hand. The person that was excluded from putting their hand up. Hello. Hi.
Hello, Jay and Sam. How are you?
Very well,
Very-
thank you. Yourself?
You can hear me now?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, now, yes.
How you been, Jay?
All good, all good. And yourself?
Yeah, good. How's the new look? You getting a lot of comments, I see.
Yeah, it's getting mixed reviews, but
Oh no.
it was so bad. It was like down here at one point. It was really bad. So I thought, clear it back. There's still some beard there. It's more stubble than anything else, but yeah, it's nice to have a change.
So you did it this morning, or you had it on last night?
Yes, I did it. I think yesterday during the day.
Is it?
I got a new shaver thing and I did everything. The whole thing got done.
You got your new toy at last.
That's it. Yeah. I'm still looking forward to when this is over, so I can go to a Turkish barber and they do it all properly. But I'm stuck with this at the moment. So, how are you keeping? How are you and Juvan?
We're good. Yeah, Julian's cooking downstairs.
Don't tell me he's cooking paneer. Don't do that to me, Ranjit.
He started cooking during the lockdown.
Oh, good. Well, it's a good thing to pick up, really, I think.
Yeah. Now I can't stop him.
It's not a good thing if you're looking to lose a bit of weight, having someone who's cooking constantly at home.
That's true. I keep saying I'm not eating today. He says no. Make a whole load of it. Just about make enough for you. He said, "Well, I'm going to put this in that. Okay, go on." So, how long do you think this lockdown is going to be?
Yeah.
Or how long we've got to suffer now?
I don't know. I tell you what. I think.
In your opinion?
I think probably to the end of June, maybe to the middle of July.
Right.
I think. I mean, I've kind of been extrapolating as to when I think lockdown is going to finish to when I think the traditional room auctions are going to reopen.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been hoping that they'll be open by, May, June next year.
Oh, the auction rooms.
Yeah.
Next year.
Well, I think so, because if you think, even with like when the lockdown is released, it's going to be done staged. At least that's what everyone is saying.
Yeah.
And I think, auctions as well as, big gatherings, networking events and things like that, they're going to be like the last things that they're going to reopen or reallow people to mingle.
Especially where the auction house London gets packed.
Yeah, and you have 500 to 700 people. It's a brilliant room. It's a brilliant auction. I don't think many other auctioneers kind of even like you look at, the so-called big auctions. They all stops in the Savills. I don't think they get as many people as Auction House London.
No.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things that I think is actually going to make it that the government are not going to allow them to reopen.
We're going to keep them again.
The rooms. I think the only way around that is if you run a room over 2 days, but it's not financially viable really, because the hotels cost a lot of money, or wherever you're having it. They know these that it's a service that they're able to provide by allowing you to run your auction there, and then you have everything else that you have to kind of structure around that. So I think it's very easy to be able to run an online auction over 2 days, like Barnard Marcus have done this week.
Right. Yeah.
But in fairness, they're the only auctioneer that's maintained their pre-coronavirus numbers. And I still can't get to the bottom of how they've managed that.
Oh, so still they had 200 like they normally do?
Yeah, 230, 250, something like that. They offered 204 and sold 140 something.
Okay.
Got a 70% success rate. Very few withdrawals. Yeah, and that's over 2 days. So I think they did fairly well. But I think.
So you don't know what
they did. Well, I'll figure it out, but it will take me more than the day or two that's passed, I think.
Or shall we get Piotr to get a job in there inside?
Yeah, let's ask. That's a good idea. Let's ask Piotr. That would be. That's it. Let me hang up the phone. Let me get Piotr on. Let me get Piotr to call that.
Yeah. Yep. So okay, let me see who else is there that I wanna. Okay, if anyone wants to have a quick, no one put up their hands. Yeah, Ranjit, did you hear we said anyone that wants to have a chat to put up their hands, apart from you, and then you put your hand up. You're the only person. Oh, okay.
Well, me and Jay's been networking already.
Yeah, I think Ibrahim. Okay, I'll let Ibrahim. Okay, Ibrahim.
Hi, Sam.
Oh yeah.
Hi, Jay.
Right. Okay, good to catch up
Yes.
with you. Yeah, you can have
How
a
are
quick chat with Jay before we start. And
Yes.
Ranjit, of course. Yeah.
Yes. Jay, I just have a question with you before we start here. You know, for different strategies that you're going to take, like you have 2 different exit strategies for any property that you're going to have at least. What are the main 2 that you're going to use, especially within this pandemic that is happening at the moment?
That's a good question, Ibrahim. I tend to have a minimum of 4 exit strategies per property that I'm looking at. I tend to focus mainly on 3 because I think they're good mainstays. So it's important to understand when I classify myself as a trader, I'm what they call a value add trader.
Actually,
So,
Jay, so I think that question, Ibrahim, great question, but I wanted something that's what Jay is going to cover tonight.
Right. So he's going to cover all the exit strategies
and
that
the
he
problem
has.
is that when Jay starts, the police have to flag him down for going over speed to stop him. So,
Right.
yeah, so you know that the police can follow him with lights going on and say, oh, I didn't say it. So, and get away with it. So now I thought you were going to ask something different.
Yeah, so if it helps, Ibrahim, I will be going through all of that.
We will go through all of that, yeah. No, I thought you were going to ask something personal, something different.
I'll keep it lighthearted. I can do chit chat. Don't worry about that, Ibrahim. What are you up to in property at the moment? What's your thing?
At the moment, I have a couple of these going around as a lease option agreement that I'm trying to secure. Got 3 at the moment. Hopefully, I'm working on and trying to get them within the next 2-3 weeks. However, because of this coronavirus and this situation at the moment now, what I'm thinking of, one of them is a 9-bedroom house in Scarborough. I can turn that into a HMO. However, the house properly at the moment is a holiday let house, and it already brings like 4,000 a week minimum. So I don't know if I have to flip it into a HMO. That's one of the biggest deals I have at the moment that I'm working on.
Yeah, interesting. So are you direct with the vendor?
Yes.
Nice. And what would their motivations be to run the lease option with you?
Well,
they just don't want to manage it themselves, or retiring.
Yes. They are tired landlord at the moment. He has more than this property. He has like 23 properties, which are in different kind of places here. The guy is 71 years old. He wants to go to Spain. He really just wants to get rid of the property, but I offered him something like I pay him the money, everything within 4 or 5 years. By the time he's retired, by the time he wants to buy the new home in Spain. So what I can say is, for the meantime, I get fully control of the property, I tenant it, and get all the profit I can from it. And within this term, the 3 or 4 years, I get all the money that I need to buy the property, because the property is in really good condition, really good area, and can make a lot of profit as well.
Okay, so you're looking at actually exercising the option at the end of term. What kind of term are you looking to run on it?
For this specific one, the one in Scarborough, the 9-bedroom house, it's a 4 to 5 years max. We haven't agreed on it yet. We're still negotiating. But it's probably going to be 5 years till the lease is done. And then what I would say, because I can't get a mortgage or something, because I'm already paying his mortgage, I will pay the money by bridge and finance at the end of the term. And then from there, I don't want to be running it only as a HMO or something, depending on the situation, on the area as well, and the house as well. So I'm just looking for different kind of exits for strategies that I'm going to use with this property specifically.
Interesting. So is it in a good destination in terms of, is there tourism? Are there visitors and things like that?
The whole street is like hotels and everything. and that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't want to do it as a holiday let, even though if it's bringing 4,000 or 5,000 a week. There's still a lot of competition. I'm not into this. I don't have that much knowledge on holiday lettings and everything. I have in HMO, I have in serviced accommodations, but this is not something that I'm really into at the moment. So I'm thinking of making it as a HMO for the meantime in this 4 or 5 years time.
So
And
how did the seller, what proof have you seen that it's turning that kind of money over? Have you seen historical accounts and the trading books?
His historical accounts, and yes, I've seen some, even like bank statement and everything, all about the profits that the business have been making until now as well. Till the next August, the business has £30,000 worth of bookings.
Interesting. Okay.
So
yeah,
here's
that's really important stuff.
Right. So what I'm saying is that I'm really confused about either letting it, leaving it as a holiday let, or make it as a HMO.
See, the risk of the HMO, and it's probably worth forewarning everybody that I'm not really good with residential tenants. So HMOs for me brings me out in a cold sweat. Right. So just be aware that my statement is biased, so you don't have to follow it. The issue I find with HMOs is it's a really good income compounding asset, because you have multiple income producing areas, so the rooms in a single unit, which is phenomenal. But it is also a problem compounding asset in terms of, if there is a bad apple in the HMO, it then starts bringing down the tone of everybody else. You may get one or two in there. You get a bad tenant, it turns everyone else aggressive. It's one of those things where it just turns into a hotbed.
Yes, but the other thing mostly depend on a management company that you will get. I'm always going to make sure that I have good tenants, like good history and good credit history, especially with payments and their behaviors, because I don't want any one bad tenant that can destroy the whole unit for me.
And that's a really good approach to take with it. The other thing that I struggle with is that you have in certain areas that they're bringing out the rate per room. So that for me, I've seen a couple of HMO investors who had really good income producing assets, and now they're being charged like £12,000 a year for rates on the building. Instead of rating the building as a whole, they're rating the individual rooms. And obviously that depends on how they're structured and set up. So I normally look at HMOs and I think, how is this set up? Am I in a position with this property to actually split it into individual flats? So like a floor by floor flat play, because then that gives me a multiple exit. It means I can run it as an HMO and then sell it onto an HMO investor. Just remember that an HMO investor is never going to pay the money that you paid for it. Of course. It's always the same. But if you had breakup value and you were in a position to go, right, if I can turn this into ground floor 1-bedroom flat, first floor 1-bedroom flat, second floor maisonette 2-bedroom flat, or whatever the structure of the building is, then all of a sudden you've now created yourself a multiple exit strategy, or at least two options. Ideally, you would want more than that. The good news with HMOs, depending on the area that you're looking at, especially in an area that you've described there, where you can Scarborough, where you can based on the footfall or the number of visitors, so any tourism or visitation to the area, is that you can actually run an HMO or a serviced accommodation approach, or you could turn it into a co-living situation. So if anyone's watched any of the stuff that what's his name, Luke Spikes and Stuart Scott, they do some really good co-living stuff, and that's very much on but they're building like a real community around how that works. So they don't really have an exit, they just have an onward transition of tenants. They take a tenant from room let to, okay, let's say that tenant gets a partner, whether it's a man or a woman, and then goes into a self-contained unit, and then that self-contained unit progresses on to something else. They take a tenant through a whole rental journey rather than rent ownership, which is really very interesting. So paying a little bit of attention to how they're running things, because I think that there's a real interesting element behind service accommodation as a co-living scenario without having it too much as a holiday let. Because if you have it as a service accommodation, so service accommodation, you can have fluctuations in return because obviously bookings start and finish. Same thing, not so much with HMOs, because you can do 6 or 12-month tenancies, and if the rooms are being maintained well and you have a good agent on your side, you can really reduce your level of voids fairly easily, especially if you're active. Right. But with the co-living, so if you're creating a co-living, co-working environment, actually you're evolving your tenants rather than losing them. And I think in terms of managing and mitigating your voids, I think it's a really interesting strategy. So if you're looking at creating an asset where it can be holiday let, service accommodation, HMO, also have a look at co-living, because that can be, those are 3 good exits or 3 good opportunities you can run to make the asset work well for you. But no, it sounds good. Unfortunately, I don't know Scarborough that well, but based on the brief details, it sounds like it could be an interesting proposition for you.
That's what I'm saying. I'll actually target Scarborough, especially this one street that I'm looking at where I have the property. There's not that many people are investing in Scarborough, especially for HMO, and there's good demand as well. I've even talked to some property managers there, especially specialized with HMO. I found a really good friend there as well. I made a friend with him. He used to be a property investor, and he also have like a similar property in the same street.
Actually, I tell you what, please, can you call me after this about Scarborough? Actually, I've been doing quite a lot of research on HMOs in Scarborough.
Right.
But we had one about 2 months ago in Scarborough, which we were struggling to move. It's actually an housing association stock, so it's done to very good standard. So I think let's talk after 9. We can have a quick chat, and then I'll see if that's still something that we can explore.
I'll be more than happy to, but at the moment, Sam, I'm just gonna finish this meeting at 9, and we
can talk tomorrow. No,
yeah,
we
of
can talk
course.
tomorrow. I've been standing here like for almost 12 hours in a row. Which, by the way, I was about to make my apology that after the first event in the morning, I was meant to prepare the PowerPoint for this evening, but I've been on the phone non-stop. So I think I'm going to improvise with RT's one from the morning, and then we can get on. We can start. Thanks. I think we've got a quorum. I think we've got quite a few people that have come on board right now. So we're not going to wait for much longer so that we can start. And by the way, Jay, just thank you for accepting our invitation to come on today and talk about reverse strategies, exit strategies, reverse thinking. So before we actually start, I'll just do a quick intro, just get about Midas. For those who do not know what Midas does. So while we get a few people to come on board, let me, before we do that, we've got a few upcoming events. We've been having a few workshops with on joint venture, which Vanish has been doing a fantastic job. So everyone, we think there's quite a lot of money that's coming up. So people need to be looking for JV partners as opposed to just going to the bank for funding. There's quite a fair bit of money. Then for us, a few weekends we've been doing auction workshop or an 8-hour narrative about what happens at auction, which myself, Ranjit, we're doing. So if people are free on Saturday the 6th, it might be the last one because I think lockdown is gradually disappearing. I think I've only been able to do that every Saturday because of lockdown. I think if I'm free to get out, I would likely be out, not be home doing so it probably is the last opportunity to get onto that. Then so that's what it is. In terms of the market analysis that we normally do, we chat about the market to see what exactly the market is. I tend to, at this stage, ask the members of the audience, is anyone here buying or selling now? Anyone that's experienced in the market?
doing both, if that helps.
You okay? I think you have a lot. You're probably going to tell us a lot more about it. Is there anyone? Just put your hand up if you want to chat about your current experience buying or selling. Is there any hands up? So yeah. So if anyone, if you feel like putting your hands up, yeah, the property market is finally reopened. What does this mean? It just means the estate agents are back in full flow. We hope soon they will be back in full flow. But as you well know, the auctions have never really closed down because auctions stayed on very much. Yeah. The current guide says viewings are okay, but no open houses. I remember I had quite a few open houses over the weekend, and I went live. People were putting comments, "Oh, how dare you do an open house when it's illegal?" Yes, viewings are okay, but not open houses. It means people cannot just walk off the street. So we do our open houses now in 10-minute slots. So people go in one after the other. So technically, it's not an open house. It's a viewing, as you were. And we tend to ask, just make sure that people are not self-isolating before they actually are allowed to go into the property. If someone is self-isolating, then of course we will not allow them to do any viewings. Yeah, so that's okay. I'm getting people texting for the this. Okay, so in terms of who's doing any deals now at all? Is there anyone? Show of hands. If you're doing any, if you're working on any deals. Yeah. So just just so yeah, people are trying to log into the system. Yeah. So in terms of deals that are happening, I think, I mean, from sales perspective, we are closing deals. Yeah, Jay, remember the flood in Kensington, the W11 one? Yeah, yeah, auction house that was sold. We had the one that did an open house in East London on Saturday and Sunday. That sold today at network auction. We had one in Bradford. It sold today. I had two in Warsaw that were meant to go on auction next in about 7 weeks, but we had someone call from Malaysia or Hong Kong yesterday, and today they sent their contracts through. So things are happening, deals are going on, and
buyers are out there.
Yeah, the reason I didn't work on this PowerPoint is that I had one other property in Doncaster, in up north, anyway, one of the cities. I think we just about agreed a price. So I've been going through the vendor and the buyer continuously to try and get it done. So I thought, let me get that tidied up before this event. So, yeah, so I think that is me. Jade, you can share your presentation, right? Let me make you a co-host.
Let's have a quick look.
Yeah, can you share?
Yeah, I think so.
Share, yeah. Okay, so I think I've rambled on and got us over 40 now. So I think quite a few people are still coming in. So if you want to share your screen so that you can start. How long is your presentation?
It's as long as you guys need it to be. I can do it in 45 minutes.
45 minutes. That's brilliant. Then we can then do. That's why you're one man. I don't know if you saw my marketing video. I said just before you get your screen shared, so that I can. A lot of people are asking me why is it a one-person panel? They normally have more people, and I'm saying now for Jay, it has to be a one-man panel because Jay can answer questions on any topic that you want, property or non-property related. Jay has an opinion on it, and often is right. Jay, of course, someone I've known for a long time. I remember the first time we met at the event, and I think we met in Boreham Wood when he just started working at auction house, right?
Yeah.
And then within say a couple of weeks, we had already agreed, and I started doing the auction events. So which I think everyone keeps asking me, how did you get into doing auction events? Yeah, this here is the answer. After our chance meeting with Jay, yeah, we started doing the JV of doing the auction events. In terms of introducing you in a bit more detail, I know on your slide you tend to go about your career, so I would rather let you do the justice of introducing yourself, and I will just shut it down and then wait for 45 minutes when the Q&A session comes up. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. At the moment, it hasn't allowed me to share the screen just yet.
Okay, just wait, just bear with me 1 second. Let me give you that. Okay, yes. Okay, do you have that option now? I've made you a co-host.
Yeah, perfect.
Wow, that's amazing when one can have so much power, you know. Zoom. So yes, okay. So I've made you a co-host. You now have the right to share. Okay, let me stop. Okay, yeah, you can stop me from sharing. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Unfortunately, I don't know how many people are watching this.
We've got about 40 that have logged into in there. There are a few people that are having problems logging on. So once you start, I'll try and get them to log in. There are quite a few more on Facebook. I've gone live on Facebook. So yeah, I think we'll probably have about 60 watching right now.
Okay, brilliant. So the exit strategy talk was basically born out of 18 years of investing in property. But really, it started when I was working at Auction House London, because I was speaking to a lot of potential investors on the phone interested in certain properties, and then I was dealing with the contracts at the contracts desk. And I'm a little bit nosy, so I'd always ask people, what are your intentions for the property? And for the most part, when people were talking, they basically were buying a property for one specific reason, one reason only. It doesn't really matter what the reason was. It was just that they were quite linear in their investment approach. You know, people may have gone on a training course or done something like this, and they're thinking, right, from now on, I'm going to be an HMO investor or service accommodation investor, or I'm going to do permitted development. So I'm just going to, and that was their single focus. And the reality of property is that things can, and if they're given half a chance, they will go wrong. So I thought it would be a good idea to share how I approach investments. So it's worth noting, in 18 years of investing, I've never lost money on a deal for an investor. And I've funded pretty much all of my investments via investor loans or joint venture partnerships with long-standing investor clients. So I've never lost them money. I've got close to a deal, and I'll talk about some of the bad things that have happened. It's very important that those things are shared, and I do look like an idiot on one or two of them. But it's important, so hopefully people don't make the same mistakes. And it also makes me look more human, because after 18 years of not losing any money, people start thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, there are certain deals where I didn't make any money, but I made sure that the investor got their money back, and that is vitally important. That's a major part of how my strategy was born and operates. So we're going to be talking about multiple exits. I don't know. Oh, so here we go. This is the brief history about me. That's a picture when I had the beard, which I've recently shaved off. I'm not getting many positive comments about the short beard, but the picture there makes me look a little bit better, I think. Or at least a lot of people seem to agree. So just about me. So I started my property career as a property professional in a estate agency. And I did that at a very young age. I actually did it before I was legally allowed to really work and drive. So I used my cousin's driving license and borrowed his car at weekends to do viewings for estate agents. So I was really quite driven to take part in property. So I went estate agency. I then worked for a developer for a short period of time. I then did investment agency. And then I worked for a couple of trusts, which were part of a off-market asset management consultancy company dealing with about £20 billion worth of real estate and other asset classes globally. and I was responsible for about 3.3 billion of that over a 7-year cycle. And then I worked in finance for a year and thoroughly hated it. Every fibre of my being thoroughly hated it. Although I did notice one thing I did like about it was the building that I was working in, but again, property. And then I got an opportunity to work at an auction company. The company that I worked for was Auction House London. And I think I worked for them for about 6 years. And I really enjoyed the experience because I got to experience the auctions and how they work from the other side of the fence, because I'd spent about 12 years prior buying and selling and trading auction. So I've got 3 degrees, so one in psychology, one in classics and one in law. I started the psychology degree when I was 11 and classics when I was 17 and law when I was, I think, 21, 22. And law is probably the one I use the most in my property career. Actually, it's 13 years. It's gone on to 13 years. So I was a property consultant managing 3.3 billion in real property assets for 7 years. There you go. I was previously the auction manager at a top 3 London auction company. And oh yes, I keep forgetting this one. I co-authored a book before the Hammer Falls, An Insider's Guide to Auction Property Success, with my co-author Piotr Ruzinek, who is on this page here on the top left-hand side. And we also so we're part of a property community called Partners in Property. And these are a couple of the other hosts and some of the co-founders of Partners in Property. And we all met accidentally at a different property networking event, which was the Great Property Meeting in Rugby. So that's a picture from there. What we'll be talking about today is embracing the what if mentality. So, and I mean what if as in what if something goes wrong, or what if some legislation changes, or what if the property isn't suitable for the desired outcome that you're looking for. And we'll be talking about how you can manage and mitigate your risk. So why property? For me, I always approach property with this one doctrine in mind, which is there's buying for you and then there's buying for your buyer. So I'm what they classify as a value add trader. So I trade property by adding value. So there are multiple different ways to trade property. And if anyone had read the Property Investor News magazine for May, they would have read my article on the different types of traders and how they obtain their properties, under what kind of agreements or licenses, and how they then trade that either into auction or off market or private treaty. So I think when I look to buy, I look to not factor in what I'm willing to pay for the property once I've done something to it. I'm factoring in what someone else is planning on paying for it. So I tend not to do developments, but I always put it down as almost a GDV, you know, a gross developmental value, but I normally call it a GTV, a gross trade value. So I need to be able to figure out what the end user is willing to pay for that said asset. And then I work backwards from there. I factor in the degree of profit, I factor in the risk, I factor in costs, I factor in the purchase price. So that's how I think in reverse, because I'm always thinking about the buyer, not the asset. I'm thinking about the buyer, and then I work backwards from there and add value and solve problems. So for me, you know, property kind of falls into a couple of categories, and obviously there's development and you know, things like that. But for the most part, for the SMEs, people like us, you're going to either be trading something, you're going to be flipping, you're going to be putting it in a portfolio, you're going to be pensioning it, and you may be doing some other things with it as well. I normally look at having properties in multiple different areas because I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket. It was a tough lesson I had learned in the 2007-2008 crash, where I owned 4 properties in the space of 2 miles. The good news with that is on one side of the street, the properties didn't lose that much value, but 2 roads away, they did. So I was in a unique position to see in a microclimate how not having all my properties on one road meant that I wasn't going to be losing that much. So I had an aggregate. I was using an aggregate rather than arbitrage. So it took me quite a lot of time I think it may be from 2002 to maybe 2010, so 8 years of my 18 years, to figure out how arbitrage really worked in property. And then I really started to apply that. And asset diversification, so this is outside of geographical location. Asset diversification comes down to class use, so that's whether it's residential, so freehold or leasehold, whether it's commercial, what class use it is, whether it's A, B, or D, or sui generis. It also comes down to how the income is gathered, so there's different types of income, whether it's FRI or licenses, or IRI for commercial premises. Whether it's a mixed-use building, so you have the asset blend or the income blend between residential and commercial. That's a really good a form of income for me, because I like the fact that if there's something going on in the commercial market and that falls by the wayside, the residential's normally in there to recover it. And if it's difficult to rent the residential, normally you have the commercial. It's very rare if you're active in managing and monitoring your assets that both of them are going to fall by the wayside. So I quite like the mixed use asset class in general. So here's my considered approach. I always factor in the end. What is this property worth? Not to me, but to somebody else, as I discussed previously. Then I start at the beginning. I start to assess the asset itself. And I start thinking about, right, once I've assessed it, what do I need to do in the interim to add significant value to it? And sometimes all that is paperwork exercise. And I'm going to be talking about those a little bit later. Then I reconsider the end. Are the exit strategies that I built into this middle section, point 3, are they suitable to obtain a good return at the end? So that's my considered approach. So this is what the considered approach looks like once you're breaking it down. So I always start off at the end by preparing a list of potential exit strategies. Now this comes down to experience. So I understand that. So you kind of have to be aware of multiple different exit strategies, and you're going to have to be comfortable with carrying those exit strategies out. I think if you're not comfortable with running multiple exit strategies, I think it's always worth building in the potential to bring on a specialist or a JV partner to help you run those kind of exits. It's important to always make sure that at the absolute worst case scenario, you can exit a property at break value, but you don't ever want to lose money. So if you have to split profit, splitting a profit is better than suffering a loss. So that's my view. Other people tend not to agree with that in some way, shape or form. I always start with the primary exit in mind, and I'm going to give a couple of case studies on this. Always monitor the progress of the deal. So I'm a little bit of a neurotic when it comes to having an asset under control, because I'm always pestering the solicitor, I'm pestering the other people involved in the deal, and I'm always trying to make sure that it's moving smoothly. I used to take a little bit more of a lax approach, and I'm going to give some examples of that. I'd always monitor the market for sentiment changes. Now, sentiment changes can be anything in the news, it can be anything local to that property. So, for instance, I bought a freehold block of flats. I think 8 flats with 6 sold off, and had 2 flats. Both needed a degree of modernisation and refurbishment, so did that with the joint venture partner. But then one of the major employers in the area closed down. I think it was a Jaguar garage. So it closed down. And I think that was something that people in the local area, which is Telford, were thinking was going to impact the rentability of the units. In fact, it made no difference at all, luckily. And they rented quite well. And they're actually 2 units that we'll be looking to sell in the next month or so. So that's what I mean by looking at the sentiment changes. Those things could also be, in terms of outside of sentiment but real changes, those can be actual market stipulations, which can be done via legislation, and those things are really very important to pay attention to. In fact, I used to love it when Sam used to run the Brent Landlords Forum and things like that, because you go to an event like that and you'll be looking at you'll be actually sitting there and speaking to the person who was putting in the, I don't know, the HMO Article 4 restrictions, or what the HMO officer was actually looking for in that borough. So you were, as an investor in a property in that area, really in a good position to kind of see what they were looking for and making sure that you weren't falling foul of just, you know, not being fully aware of the compliance, the level of compliance they were looking to see and for you to achieve in your HMO, for example. I think at that point, I always ready plan B. What does plan B look like? How is plan B diametrically different from plan A? Is there a reduce in profitability for plan B? I normally aim for plan A, B, and C to have no real drop in true value, depending on how long I have to hold the asset for or what the exit looks like. I tend to start with 3 in mind, but I normally have 4 mainstay exits that I run. I think a lot of people kind of go into property investing or into the asset itself, and they tend to have a very, very fixed mindset. I'm doing this, I'm going to achieve this. And if it doesn't work, they end up being like deers in headlights. They kind of get a little bit shocked, and then they act in haste. And when you act in haste, you can make mistakes, and they're normally unnecessary, unforced errors. And that can really affect your profitability and your ability to exit the property in a timely and cost-effective manner. Remember that your priority is your profit. So you need to make sure that you're focusing on that, but you're not restrictive by the use and the way that you're fixing that property. I always structure my sell with my buyer in mind, and I focus on my buyer's why. Why is my buyer buying this property? What are they looking to achieve? Are they looking for capital appreciation? Are they looking for a good yield? Are they looking for a combination of those 2 things? If so, they're very much a buyer like myself. Obviously, at that point, you can reflect on how that transaction has gone from start to finish, and then just go round again. Remember, there's time throughout the purchase process where you can measure and reassess your exits, and don't be afraid to do something like that. It's quite valuable to have that flexible approach. So actually, you know, before I go on, let me do some case studies, because they're normally quite valuable for people. So I'll start with the first property that I'd ever purchased. And there may be quite a few people on the call who have heard this before, so I will apologize in advance. But what I will say is, with this property, I thought when I bought this property, I had made a brilliant investment decision. And I think actually I probably still had that first deal was a brilliant investment strategy. But what I didn't consider was something could go wrong. So I bought the property more out of necessity than option. So it was around. It was shortly after my mother had passed away. I was looking after my younger brother who has some mild disabilities, and we were living in the family home which we had sold, and there was some money left over from that. I was at university and I was working 2 jobs, and it just didn't seem like a tenable situation. It was becoming very much untenable. I was very, very close at the time with my uncle. He was a property person, and he always used to say, look, there are, outside of food, water, and oxygen, there are 2 things that people are always going to need. They're going to need somewhere to live, and they're going to need somewhere to die. So whether it's a graveyard or a cremation or whatever it may be, but there's always going to need that facility for that process to be handled. So it was West Sussex. And I found through the auction, it was a local auction at the time, I found a funeral director's home, and I had started this really very early on, and I didn't actually know what I was doing. And although my uncle at the time was a property developer and had quite a bit of property experience, he was taking very much a backseat. He wanted me to learn without really being interrupted or being guided too much in one way or another. So I bought it. I must have bought it at around £60,000 or £65,000. The numbers for me on this deal are always quite hazy because I spent a long time blocking it out, but I shared this story once and people laugh, so I'm normally quite keen to reshare it again. The reason I bought this one is A, it was in a primary shopping parade. It was a ground floor, it had a massive rear yard, and it had 2 stories above, well, a story and a mezzanine above. But one of the things that I really liked about this funeral director's home is that the rear yard, they had these cremation ovens. It was all obviously all covered and things like that. And I thought, well, actually, the business seems like it could stack quite nicely. So obviously, when you're valuing commercial properties, you're valuing the commercial properties, not just on the strength of the covenant, but how sustainable you think their business is in that area. And I think there was only one other funeral director's home within about 10 miles. So I thought, you know, in a per capita or per roof pots, chimney pots, they had what I would consider quite a sustainable business. I think I own this asset for a total of 18 months, which is normally the length of time, well, not normally, which is the absolute longest length of time that I'd like to own a property for as a trader. At that point, I wasn't really a trader. I was looking at this asset bringing in some income so I could drop one of the 2 jobs that I was running and focus on my studies and looking after my brother. So about 9 months in, it's about halfway through the ownership, I got a phone call from the tenant telling me that the shop had blown up. So just picture this, I'm 17 years old, I'm working 2 jobs, I'm going to university for the 2nd time, looking after my disabled brother, mother's passed away, all these different things. And the investment where I put a large portion of inheritance into an asset, and the damn thing blew up. So what happened was they have to do these checks on these cremation ovens to make sure that they're firing correctly and there's no blockages and all these other things. It's part of their insurance that they have to do that. One of the they used to use like thick rubber tubing. I don't know if anyone remembers from like high school or primary school when you had those Bunsen burners, you know, those thick orange rubber tubings. They had those, but they were obviously slightly thicker. One of them over a period of time had frayed. Fortunately, no one was hurt because actually you can fire the ovens from quite a distance. So basically what happened was they fired it and there was some, I don't know if they call it backlash or something like that, but the fire had lit in the oven and it had gone out and it opened in the frayed gap of the tubing, and it had set the yeah, this is the painful part. The actual gas canister, one of the gas canisters that fires the oven, went through the roof and then landed and went straight down. It damaged my roof and the neighbour's roof and one of the floors of the building. So I think I'd spent maybe 2 or 3 days afterwards just kind of an absolute wreck, not really understanding how I was going to fix this, what it would take to fix this. I now have an income producing asset which isn't producing income. They had to close for a period of time. But actually, you know, it got to a point where reality started to kick in. And the reality was that the tenant had insurance, A, for the ovens and for their materials and for the internal skin of the building. And I had landlord's insurance for the outside of the building. So the insurance really did take care of everything. The next door neighbour wasn't too upset because they got a brand new roof, at least a large portion of it. And so did I. I managed to get the building up and running. I think it was in under 2 months, so which wasn't too bad because because there was holes in the roof and other things like this, and there were other issues in the rear courtyard that they had to fix. That it took a little bit longer than it should have done, and there was a little bit of damp that came in because when they sealed up the roof, some water got in. Just these things happen. And then they had to dry it out with industrial dehumidifiers, I think they were, massive fans, made a hell of a noise. But actually 9 months later when I sold it, I think I sold it for, I think, just under £100,000. So I realised I'd made about 30-ish thousand pounds on the sale from the in and the out. And I think in the lifetime of it, I think I'd made about £9,000 or £10,000 in income from the commercial tenant. And at that point, I didn't have a multiple exit strategy. So I didn't have an exit strategy. I was thinking this was a kind of asset that I'd own for a long period of time. But once it blew up, that kind of soured the relationship with the property. So that is the story of the first property that I'd ever purchased. I'd kind of always struggled to see whether the story translates just as well in a virtual environment as it does when I used to present it in the room. But it was really something that had a profound effect on me and made me think, right, what happens if this happens? It was really the start of my what if approach to property investing. So here we have the present and the future. So the current market, we have the pandemic, which obviously everyone's aware of. I think the B word has kind of been disregarded, but I would consider Brexit or the effects of Brexit to very much be the scorpion's tail at the end of this COVID journey, however long that takes. I think the difference between vacant and tenanted property, especially at auction, has a really big impact on saleability at the moment. I think with all the changes to landlord legislation recently, I think buying a tenanted property can be a bit of a risk. You kind of want to make sure that the tenant was given, you know, were they given their right to rent check? Were they given the boiler certificate or the gas safety certificate? Were they given a copy of the EPC? Was everything within their tenancy done correctly? Because if they stop paying or something goes wrong and you want to get rid of them, you know, there are so many ways it can be argued if they haven't been onboarded correctly. Discounted stock, I would argue that the level of discounted stock has risen. I think, and that's not open market, I think that's off market. If you have the right kind of sources, there are a lot of motivated sellers. I think the property buying companies, so like the property buying company or We Buy Any Home, they are sitting on a lot of contracts. I was talking to somebody quite recently, and one of the companies, it would be unfair to say which one, have in excess of 300 units that they're waiting to process. And that's been building up since the start of the COVID situation. And I think that may even go back as far as the middle of February for them. So just to know that there's a lot of transactions out there. There's a lot of motivated sellers who are looking to exit and to enter the market. And these quick buying companies are out there and they're still doing business. Again, I think value adding is vitally important. And to be fair, that's in any marketplace. And I think permitted developments, I've been screaming about this from the rooftops for quite some time, but I cannot wait for the air rights permitted development to come through. So that for me is a very important part within the current market. Again, I'm talking about permitted development rights, PDRs in trends. I think it is something that's got, it is a big trend. A case study is an existing asset that myself, Piotr Rusnek and Rod Turner are dealing with ourselves. It's our own asset. And it is, we bought it out of auction in October of last year. It was lot number 1 in the Harman Healy auction. It was guided at like 175 or 185. But we won the bidding. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 other bidders that were bidding quite actively, and we won it at 212. And we recently had it valued in excess of £700,000. And that was because we had entered in for permitted development rights to turn 4 workshops producing 14,700 per annum into 4 one-bedroom mews houses. Just to give you an idea, there are 1-bedroom flats at the end of this mews, which are on the market anywhere between 375 and 400, depending on the square footage. So, you know, you're looking at a GDV. If you did 4 times 400, you get the idea. I'm quite interested in freehold ground rents, and there are a couple of reasons for that. And if people have questions at the end, I may share those. I may not. It depends on how polite people are. But I'm really excited. I've been looking at buying quite a few of those recently, and there was one that we went to buy in the Allsops auction in February before COVID kicked off. and it was a really attractive building. And it was in a really nice area. I think it came under the Westminster ward, maybe Paddington or Marylebone, maybe Marylebone ward of Westminster. It was guided at £15,000. I think our maximum bid in our minds was about 40 to 45, and we always give ourselves a range. And if anyone wants to know why, I can discuss that at the question time as well. But it sold for 91,500, which was obviously more than double what we were willing to pay. And it's important. I don't think that that person at 91,500 overpaid for the asset. I think their ability to measure the risk against the money that they had available was important. I think if we bought it at that value, we wouldn't have overpaid, but our investors, a greater proportion of our investors' money would have been at risk. So it didn't make sense for us in that environment. I think office blocks, not just for conversion. So a lot of people are looking at office blocks to do office to resi style developments. And whilst I think that is viable, it does create a really good segue for me to talk about my second property case study. So in 2009, I was dating a rather attractive commercial agent in Birmingham. And it was never really about business. She was actually a lovely lady. I've got to be careful how much I talk about her because I'm married. She was always talking about this problem property that she had. It was an office block on the Hagley Road called the Seba Building in Birmingham, and it was a very interesting building because I think she was trying to sell it, I think, at a million or 1.5, I think it was, and it would come down and come down and come down as agents do. You know, they manage the seller's expectations, and all of a sudden the property is worth 2 million, you end up selling for 1 million, whatever it was. Bear in mind, this is 2009, so this is really in the hot seat of the financial crash in 2008. It was producing £500,000 per annum of income. And you would think, actually, if it's on the market for 1 million, that's a 50% yield. That's massive. Well, actually, the truth of it was that the yield was very much gross. It was actually netting about £50,000 per annum. And even then, the yield on £1 million purchase isn't horrendous. It is in terms of wanting to manage the process and try and add a degree of value. Remember, value add is something that's very important to me. So I had negotiated a purchase of that property at £500,000. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that I was sleeping with the agent at the time. But I bought it at £500,000. The trick with this asset was the fact that it was in a position where it was turning over £500,000 a year, but it was only netting £50,000 a year. That tells me it was being massively mismanaged, and I had suspicions that actually it wasn't just being mismanaged, but there were people taking advantage. So I basically went in about a week after we completed, because I was paying attention to what was going on over that completion process, and I fired all of the management staff because it was a serviced office environment. I had then spoken to a couple of the tenants, one of them being the local district council. I think it was one of the local district council departments had pretty much a whole floor and a half almost. And then there was a national charity. I can't remember if it was the RSPCA or the RSPCC. That detail tends to fail me because I normally get the two mixed up anyway. And then there was maybe 4 or 5 other tenants spread over the floors. What I did was I had gone in there and I changed it from being a serviced office to a fixed office system. So I'd given the local authority pretty much the entire floor, and I turned their lease into an IRI, which is internal repairing and insuring lease, and I gave them that agreement for, I think it was about 15 years. I then gave the charity the same thing on the other floor and did the same thing. They had a lease there for 15 years. And then the other tenants, I kind of segregated. I mean, the good thing about the serviced office was the walls were pretty much not just paper thin, but they were movable. So I was able to create almost self-contained office environments. I got rid of a lot of, I put in a virtual reception. There was only really one member of staff that was required, well, 1.5. So it was an evening security officer, and during the day it was a receptionist who kind of managed everything. I put in a system, so I bought it for $500,000, and including costs of purchase, refurbishment, and putting a new T1 or T2 broadband into the building, I was all in at about £750,000, give or take. And this was investor money. And the real story behind this is I only bought this asset because it was a joke. It was a challenge that an investor didn't expect me to take seriously. They said, if I gave you, I think it was at the time £2 million, and I gave you 2 years to double it, I don't think you'll be able to do it. So took on the challenge because everyone knows I love to be challenged. And actually, I spent about £750,000 of this, and in the space of, I think, just over a year, just before the 18-month mark, I had turned the whole building round, added significant value, taken it from a serviced office where someone was definitely, had their hand in the till, for lack of a better terminology, and where the tenants weren't really happy, and I created more of a harmony and separated the building into individual floors, all of them on either 15-year leases or 7-year leases on IRIs. And I sold it within 18 months of ownership for £5 million. So when I say office blocks, not just for conversion, that's what I did without any real development, any real change of use. All I did was I re-systemized and reorganized the asset, and then sold it for, almost 10 times the purchase price. So there you go. Again, it's difficult to see how impressed people are by that because I can't see anybody, but that was probably one of the larger deals in terms of cost, in terms of uplift in value. That was a really impressive one for me. Land with and without planning. I think this has always been quite popular. I think people kind of, in 2016, when a lot of the new landlord legislation came out, Article 24 or Section 24, Article 100, where you're no longer in a position to offset your costs against your profit. A lot of landlords and historical landlords started exiting the market, and they thought, well, actually, I don't want to be a landlord anymore, I'll be a developer, and they started overpaying for massive land sites. Some of them successful, some of them unsuccessful, and you saw those come back to the market whether via land agents or at auction, and they were kind of reselling them for less than they had purchased them at. But I think it is a really good strategy if you know what you're doing. And again, if you don't know what you're doing, you need to be in a position where you have the right kind of professionals around you, whether that's an architect, whether it's a planning consultant, whether it's a builder or a developer or a contractor. You kind of need to situate yourself correctly there. But I think it is a really good strategy. A really good trend at the moment is HMOs, service accommodation holiday lets, whether that's traditional or rent to rent. I haven't got a great deal of respect for that, but in general, but I think HMOs do solve a problem. We're not building enough houses, and we do have a housing shortage, and we have a growing population. So HMOs really do solve a national problem. So what's next? Don't look at me, I haven't got the foggiest idea. I'm just a leaf blown in the wind along with everybody else. I do have stipulations, I do have thoughts and ideas, but God knows if any of them are right. What I do kind of temper that with is, problems still need to be solved and properties still need to be sold. There are some really good examples of that. I don't know if anyone is actively paying attention to the auction market, but the one property or the one transaction that really impressed me this month was actually lot number 1 at the Auction House London auction, which was a 1-bedroom flat in, I think, Reigate, Surrey Way. It was guided at about £80,000 and ended up selling for, I think, 190,500, which is just over 2.5 times the guide price. And I thought that was a remarkable sale. I think we had done a bit of research on it because it looked interesting from the off. and it looked like it was on the agent via the joint agent for about £120,000, so it massively overachieved. And we were doing a YouTube live because one of the things I do is an auction preview and a review of the said auction on the said auction lots. We had David Sanderman from Essential Information Group. I don't know how many of you know him or not. And he was saying that he was looking to bid, and he still thinks the person who bought it still got themselves a good deal. So it shows that, you know, doesn't matter where the price starts or really where the price finishes. What matters is the value. And as long as you're value based, you can't really go too far wrong, as long as you get your values correct, of course. So here are my top 4 exit strategies. Here we go. So permitted development, because of this current deal that we have, it's really kind of made it very clear to me how unbelievably amazing this strategy is. Because if you understand the permitted development rights, and we have a really good consultant that works with us on permitted developments, he actually came and did one of our workshops in December of last year, and we obviously have that recording available for people, as well as our auction workshop. We had that recording available for people as well. And basically, he came and spoke at that event. And at that point, the permitted development had come through. It hadn't been approved. It came through early January, and we were all very much over the moon with that, because obviously there's still a risk. But I think once you understand it, it is a phenomenal value add opportunity. It's a phenomenal value add opportunity. I mean, we were talking to Ranjan Bhattacharya at the auction review, which was, I think, Tuesday evening. We did it on a YouTube live, and he was talking about a property that he was looking at in Pinner, which I think was in the Allsop commercial auction. And he wasn't going to bid, but he was talking about how you could potentially stack permitted development. So he was talking about using use G for one part of the rear, and then using use M for the other part of the rear, and then maybe creating to the rear of the commercial unit, which was long, it was massive, maybe 2 or 3. Obviously, if you use G and M, you can actually squeeze quite a few units in. And although you can do it, the local authorities don't like it. And he was going to use getting class G and M through on permitted development as a really good exercise in going for full planning permission to create 3 1 or 2 bedroom use houses to the rear, knowing that the local authority would far more appreciate the 3 use houses than they would the class G and M uses, which they would pretty much be bound to grant. So it's looking at permitted development in that kind of respect. So I've made it very clear that that was Ranjan's strategy. So if anyone wants to have a chat with him about something like that, that would be a good thing. He's normally quite open to a discussion. Freehold ground rents, I'm just going to keep dropping that there and seeing if anyone likes the sound of it or wants to hear anything more about it. Mixed use, myself and Piotr, we go through auction catalogues weekly. It's something that we really enjoy. Obviously, we're looking at stuff to buy. We're trying to remain as active in the property market as possible. And I think mixed use has got a really good long-term investment value opportunity. We, as a member, as one of the co-hosts of Partners in Property, we had our digital event yesterday evening, and we had a guy called Alex Schlagman from SaveTheHighStreet.org, and he was talking about, obviously there's a lot of people that are saying, you know, there's the death of the high street and everything's going online and all these different things, but he was talking about how you can create sustainability with your tenant and with your asset in the high street. So I still think very much it's a viable asset class. I still very much enjoy title splits and asset breakup, and I think that kind of follows on from the permitted development and the mixed use. So you can see how the multiple exits can all connect, and how you can exit at either one point and still have obtain value and profitability. I still enjoy, and I think we were talking to a chap just before this had come on, and I don't want to forget the name, that would be extremely very rude. I can remember it. Ibrahim, that's it. We were talking about an opportunity that he was looking at. And I was talking about, you know, maybe based on the type of property that it is there any breakup value to it? And that's normally how I look at something, especially from a residential perspective. I don't really find a great deal of value in a residential property for me in terms of becoming a landlord. But what I do like is I like a property where maybe it's a short lease flat or a short lease house. You know, those are very specific kind of investments, so I haven't put them on the top four. But if I do find a viable short lease flat or house, I will be looking to buy it, because you can add significant value, and there are many different ways to do that apart from just extending the lease. I like to look at houses where they've been split into flats, or maybe not been split into flats correctly, or they haven't used the space wisely. You can sneak an extra flat in there, or you can do other things like that. So I pay attention to those kind of assets where there is, instead of just creating an HMO, I can create maybe a 3 or 4 story house and then just split those into self-contained flats and sell those flats. Very much like the Victorian or Edwardian style properties that you can buy those share freehold flats, and they're really quite attractive. Those are the kind of things that I like to do. So yeah, here's the office block. So this is what this looked like. Yeah, I did it only to win a bet. This is the existing property. I put the auction purchase at 210 there, which is incorrect. We're actually saying that we went in to pay 210 for it. But the way the bidding had fell at the auction, landed on 210, so we went to 212. So you can see the kind of costs that were in there, and that was really very easy. I have discussed the first property I bought. I think I have gone over my 45-minute allowance, so hopefully there'll be quite a few questions at the Q&A. I'm happy to talk about a couple of the stubborn mistakes I've made. So one I had made was, if anyone knows, oh God, where was the property now? Sorry, I've got a young daughter, I'm not sleeping properly, so it was a bit of a mind junk. So it was southeast London. I bought no, it wasn't, it was Selhurst. Does anyone know Selhurst? Do I even know Selhurst? Yes, it was Selhurst. It was one of the last houses on the road, and this was one of the properties where I almost lost money. For me, not for my investor, but for my cut. It was one of the last properties on the road where it hadn't been cut up into flats. It was the last remaining house, and it didn't really have a great deal of expertise as flats. So there were no really, really good or acceptable, for the road at least, comparables of value. So I picked it up quite cheaply. And I'd got the planning permission to split them into 2 2-bedroom flats. So the way I managed to do that was I got planning permission to extend the ground floor, and then to do a loft extension. So rear mansards, not front mansard. So one would end up being a ground floor 2-bedroom flat, and the other one would be a 2-bedroom maisonette over 2 floors. And I'd got the planning, I'd done the build out, which was really my first real kind of refurby build out project, and then resold that. And then I maintained the freehold, which probably wasn't worth that much. And then the local authority were going to put an enforcement notice on the property for not fulfilling a planning obligation. And the planning obligation wasn't actually going to put a £20,000 enforcement notice, effectively enforcing me to return it from from 2 2-bedroom flats back to a 3-bedroom house, which is obviously impossible. So they were going to charge me £20,000 for a mistake that they had made. And the mistake was that they had granted the planning permission before the highways authority had given them their report on that. Very much their problem, not mine. But the highways agency was like, well, actually, there were too many houses that were converted into flats, and you've got to think about road usage or wear and tear, and you've got to think about people wanting parking. Bear in mind, this was really very, very close to the station and transport, so there wasn't actually that much road usage there. Anyway, I fought that one out, and £80,000 later, I settled the case and offered them £5,000 to remove the enforcement and to end the whole thing. So my share of the profit on that deal was about £95,000. The investor had already been paid out, so I fought this whole process with my profit, and obviously I think about £90,000 of that was swallowed up. And if you take into consideration any cost of my time in handling it, I think I kind of wiped my mouth on that deal, without losing any money, but without making any money. And again, it was being stubborn. There were opportunities before it got to that £80,000 in fees level where I could have negotiated, I could have settled, I could have done all of these things, but it was probably youth at the time that kind of prevented. I felt an injustice had been done. I was going to fight it, and I was going to win, and I was going to do all these things. Actually, it wasn't worth it. So I've learned more and more to kind of be aware of those situations and be looking for a solution rather than looking for a fight. So these are my specialisms: short lease flats and houses, solving legal issues. I do love a problem with a property, mixed use, title splitting and breakup. Obviously, I've been trading at auction for about 12, 13 years now, as well as working for a top London auction company for 6 years. So I've got quite a bit of experience, and I still actively trade. So that's buy and sell properties at auction. So that's my social media handle, which you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And then the Auction Pro there is my business partner, Piotr. So we trade together and we do things like that. We do a weekly newsletter, and that goes out on Mondays. So if you're interested in what we're doing in property and how the auctions are performing, you're more than welcome to go onto that website there, register for the newsletter, and just keep informed. It's also a good way to get in contact with us if you want to or if you need to. But I think that's it. That's the presentation. Sam, are you still there? How are we going to do the Q&As? So I will stop sharing the screen there, so we can go back to normal. There you go.
Oh, okay. We back to normal. Okay, great. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Oh, I don't have my camera on. Okay, thank you, Jay. And yeah, so it's been a fantastic presentation. Question, while I'm looking through a few of the questions that have come in here and on Facebook, yeah, you said you're very interested now in freeholds. Why is that? Just starting with that.
Well, I'm looking at freeholds as an asset class because I can see multiple ways to add value. So some of the freehold, and I think that came in from Bushra. Hi, Bushra. Bushra normally joins us on our morning coffee mornings, which I know you're prone to jump on and listen to every once in a while, Sam. So yeah, so the reason I like them, and the one that we were going to pick up was, it was a double-fronted building. And it was just over 4 stories, which means that they would have dug significant footings to enable the building to be extended. So I was very much looking at buying these types of buildings as an almost a land banking situation, so that when the air rights does come in, the permitted development air rights do come in, I would have an underlining asset where I could maybe do some off-site modular construction and then put 1 or 2 flats on top of that building. And actually it would have sustained, based on the footprint of the building, 2 2-bedroom flats. And this was in Westminster, where the average value of a 2-bedroom flat would be anywhere between £850,000 and £950,000. So if I could have bought that building for £45,000, and we were talking to an architect who does modular construction, he has a whole system that makes it quicker and easier. Apparently it's about 30% quicker and 30% cheaper than most other techniques out there. He's a really interesting chap, actually. We could have put 2 flats on top of the building for about £200,000 each. Like really very nice penthousey kind of very nouveau looking buildings, and potentially have sold them for £900,000 a piece. So if you do the maths, we would have been in, without looking at cost or stamp or anything like that, at about £450,000 in terms of the buying the building and the physical addition to the building. and the GDV was 1.9. That's a fantastic return. So that was the reason why we were looking at that asset specifically. The other reason to look at freehold ground rents is I really like the ones where there is slight reversion, but it isn't. The problem with reversion is you can't really force the tenant to extend their lease, therefore getting the true value for the freehold itself. However, I've kind of been working on a strategy whereby if, for instance, a freehold ground rent does come to the market, and a lot of the leases are around the 75 to 85 years, so they're getting close to the marriage value or the mortgage value. Even some, I guess, that where there's one or two which are around the 60 years, 65-year lease level. Again, you can use a leasehold extension calculator to figure out what the kind of reversion cost on that would be, and sometimes so a little bit more. But what I was thinking was I'm almost always looking for distressed freeholds like that. And one way to encourage the leaseholders to extend their lease sooner than they would have expected is to look at the building, see what kind of internal disrepair it's in, see what kind of physical disrepair it's in, and then serve a Section 20 notice for major works. And then what that does, and the way that you do that would be, you would say, look, all of this works needs to be done for this building, but if you want to, and this is the kind of cost that I've come up with, and you'll get a couple of quotes, and obviously you as the freeholder, you're going to put your 10% management on it and do all those types of things. You could turn around and say, look, I can hand all of this over to you if you would all like to buy a share of the freehold. So all of you extend your leases with me, create a share of freehold, so a right to manage committee, and you can take the asset off me. So you won't have to pay for the asset, you just extend the leases, I disappear, and then you guys are in control of your own destiny. You can refurbish and refit the exterior and the communal areas as you like, and you'll be, obviously your properties will be worth more because they no longer have short leases, they have share of freehold. So I've been looking at freehold ground rents with a view to achieve that kind of return. And obviously short leases as well. It's always worthwhile being the freeholder of anything where within the asset there are depreciating assets which have an appreciating asset value to you going forward. So Bushra, those are two of the main, or actually I guess three of the main reasons why I look at freehold ground rents.
Okay, and that's very interesting actually to know, to understand that you can actually just buy them, get everyone to extend their lease to 99 or share freehold, and then you dump it and then you make some quick money. Okay, so that's not thought of that actually. That's very clever.
It needs to be managed in a really specific way, and your due diligence leading up to that has to be really very acute, because you're looking you're looking pretty much for the owner occupiers. You don't really want you don't really want to be dealing with a landlord who may not really be motivated to extend at that time. So you kind of have to really pre-qualify it. Sam, it looks like you've frozen. I think you'd frozen there, Sam. I think I missed all of that, I'm afraid.
No, I'm saying there's a building that we oh, is it? Hello.
Hi there, Sam. I think I lost you there for a second.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It looks like, yeah. Even myself, I couldn't. It was a bit frozen. Yeah. Yeah. No. So what I'm saying, that there's a building that we actually own a flat in Hendon, and we had the right to manage company. And every time they will call a meeting, it's only the owner occupiers would turn up. And I think I was the only landlord that would turn up, just more because I like networking than anything else. But none of the I've never seen any of the buy-to-let landlords turn up from at the meetings at all. But yeah, I think you might remember Geneva Court. I think I sold 2 of those flats through yourself in auction house?
Yes, yeah, I remember at the Burrows. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, great. So then we've got a question here from Dill. Dill said, "Good evening, everyone. Jay, what do you think will be the biggest opportunity in the next 1 to 2 years?"
I may have answered that, but I think permitted development rights is massive for value add opportunity. I think it's massive. I think as a residential landlord, there are so many restrictions that have come in. There's been more legislation against landlords in the last 5 years than there have been in the last 30 years. So that tells me actually it's a shrinking market. And I think if you are a residential landlord, the biggest opportunity for you is going to be social housing. I think if you're a developer, I think the biggest opportunity for you is looking at doing sustainable development, because I think there's a lot of grants out there for that, as well as maybe even trying the build to rent process. I listened to a panel recently and I was thoroughly impressed with the dynamics of that. So if you're a trader, permitted development is a massive value add. If you're a residential landlord, I think social housing is going to be massively important. And I think if you're a developer, build to rent is a viable opportunity, depending on the development, of course. But yeah.
Okay, great. I think, yeah, social housing, it's very important that you mentioned that, because it's something that, like, we do the Harrow brand, most of the council events. So I've been talking to the councils quite a lot during lockdown, trying to help them get some accommodation. Now the rates have not only gone up, but because of COVID, quite a few councils have the right now to negotiate rents. If they need a property and the landlord only wants a particular rent, they can actually negotiate and agree. So, I mean, I had landlords that think that, they might cancel the negotiated rents after the COVID. I said, no, they can't. There's no way that a council will put out 10 families on the street. It will cost them more in doing so. So yes, so social housing is a great opportunity out there now for people to actually get that going. Yeah, okay. So I think one more thing I was going to ask you. Okay, although you did actually cover the various industries, but or markets, because usually people ask about the property industry or what's happening in properties, but they forget that it's different markets. Specifically, developments. What do you think will happen to property developers, especially the ones that are actually finishing that site now, and people that may be starting a new site?
I think a lot of people have been using the word pivot. I think once you've gone through the hard work and you have a completed site and you're now at the marketing phase, bear in mind a lot of amateur developers always forget about this part. This is a really expensive part of your journey, because it's the part where the progress can slow down and even halt to a degree. And then you also have all of the marketing costs, and then the agent fees and fall throughs and all this stuff, and the marketing costs of creating a brochure or putting a show flat together and things like that. I think if you have a completed site and you've kind of structured your development, I mean, there's many different ways to do it. So let's say you've got a stack of equity, mezz finance, bridging, and development finance, and you're probably rolling over a little bit too much into that. I think what you need to do is you need to be able to potentially rent those units quickly, so you can service the debt level, or you can refinance based on it being an income producing asset. And I think you only really need to look at that. If you sign people up on 12-month ASTs with 6-month breaks, I think the landscape is going to change. And you may not have to rent all of them out, because you do want to still have the ability to resell those. But remember, if they are let, you can actually increase your pool of potential buyers to include investors, because it's a ready let investment. It's a warm asset. So I would consider that as a really good exit, or at least a maintaining of an asset before you sell. in this market because everything's slowed down and you've got all these restrictions in place. I think that will be a good way to handle it short term. What is the other way that I was thinking about another avenue for developers recently, and I haven't really worked through it yet, but it is something I've been thinking about because I kind of pay attention to a lot of the developer forums because it's not something that I'm not a developer, but it's really good to get that different skill set in. So I've been formulating something in the back of my mind. I've also been formulating a new type of option agreement, which I'm working on. I've got a solicitor trying to draw up an agreement that kind of fits into it fits in quite nicely with what I'm looking at doing now. So I'm always trying to develop new ideas, not really strategies, but just different exit points that I'm able to achieve at any point throughout a deal. So the new option agreement that I'm working on is because it's an option to auction, and it works it in such a way that it kind of encompasses a lot of how the underwrite works. So I'm playing around with that quite a bit. Hopefully have something finished with that solicitor by the end of the year, because it's going to take a lot to get that working right. But I'll be looking to implement a lot of that into 2021.
Oh, okay. I'll be very, very much interested in that because, like, I
thought you would be.
Yeah, I tend to place quite a lot of properties in and then just share of commission, but there are better ways of doing it. I mean, just say like between yesterday and today, I probably saw like 4 properties at auction. So, and I was going to ask a question about this later. So, but
I think there's a couple of people that have raised their hand. I don't really know what to do with a raised hand.
Oh yeah, okay. Let me get them. I think, yeah, if someone wants to ask a question in person, they just raise their hands and I can get them to speak by themselves. Let me see who's raised their hands. Okay.
I can't.
Okay, I'm going to allow him to talk very soon. Salish, you can unmute yourself and talk, but just before we go through, yeah. So now I think I'll be very interested in knowing how to use those. Salish, you can unmute yourself. Salish, is he still there? Maybe yes, Salish, you can unmute yourself now from your end, and then you can talk. Okay, I think James.
There we go. I think he's unmuted. Evening, Salish. Maybe having some technical issues.
Yeah. Okay, Salish. Okay, I'll get James to go first. Okay, James, you may go. Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay?
Yeah, you got your hands on the pulse. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, no, I was hoping to ask Jay. I've actually used Jay Services very recently on the consultancy side of things.
I thought that was a familiar voice. How you doing, James? You all right?
I've got a bit of lag here, but
you can do the video if you want to. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just not in the, I'm lying down on the couch, so probably not the best. I was going to ask about the short leases. You mentioned obviously there's the serve and the section.
Oh, you still there, James? I think you're muted again.
Hi, James. Just unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Perfect. No, I was just saying about the short leases and extending. Obviously, these one way to get a value add. But you mentioned there's other things you do in regards to properties with short leases to get an additional value add. Could you go into that a bit more, Jay?
Yeah. So again, this is another one of these mechanisms that I've kind of just created. I've been thinking about it for a little while now. I've been thinking about the issue of because obviously when a freehold goes to either auction or to private treaty, so Section 5A or Section 5B notices are served, they can either choose to reserve their right. So the leaseholders have a right of first refusal to buy the freehold anyway. But if they choose not to, that is a really good indicator to state that actually independently they probably don't have the funds available to either buy the freehold. So what I was thinking, and obviously this all comes down to, and I said there's very specific data points you need to be looking for when you're structuring this kind of deal. But what you're really looking for is you're looking for a rundown block where it's been hopefully a little bit mismanaged and where it's owner occupiers. So you can obviously download the titles and do your due diligence on the ownership, and you can obviously go and knock on doors. I do love a door knock. The way you want to structure it is you don't really want to force their hand, but you want to give them two options, almost like an ultimatum. You want to give them the option of, it would be really nice if you could extend your lease, because I'd like the extension cost. Or even better, what we could do is we could add significant value to your property and give you a greater degree of ownership. So it all comes down to how you sell it. And I know when we were talking on our consultancy days, it all does come down to how you're positioning these kind of things. So apart from the data that you're looking at, so obviously when a freehold ground rent comes to auction, your first question is always, have the tenants, have the leaseholders, who are, it's landlord and tenant, under the Landlord and Tenant Act, have the tenants been given their right of first refusal, and have they taken up that right? If they have, then you know that these are people that who are looking to buy it. Then you can outbid them. And that's a really good strategy. Sometimes you can overpay for it, but if you outbid them, bear in mind, they're not going to be the happiest people with you as the new freeholder. So what you want to do then is you're going to structure that asset saying, look, okay, I've outbid you, but I think this is a better thing for all of you. So let's set up an RTM. Let's increase all of your leases so you can all pay me £15,000, £20,000, whatever it may be, equivalent value of a lease extension, or maybe a little bit cheaper than the lease extension. But if all of the leases don't need to be extended, but you get all of the leaseholders to pay you that £15,000 or £20,000, all of a sudden you've created a value multiplier in an asset where value multiplication isn't really there. So that's kind of how I would structure it. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I think that's a nice little unique strategy you've come up with there, that it's very specific, and I think you do need to find the right properties for that, and they might be few and far between, but if you can come across them, I think it's profitable, isn't it? It's good.
If I can do one of those or two of those a year, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
It's normally a lower cost implication to enter, but if you can multiply that on the exit, which is what trading is all about, then I'm down. I'm happy with that.
No, I like it, Jay. Very good, very good.
Cool. Sam, do we have anyone else looking to take part? I have a couple of questions. I think Sailesh has kind of come back on. And
yeah, Sailesh. Sailesh, are you there? Okay. Okay. We've got Patrick. Okay. Let me get Dill on before I go to. There's some questions on Facebook, but I'll get Dill. Dill.
Hi, Sam. Good evening, Jay. How are you guys?
all the better for hearing your voice. How are you?
I'm good. Please value freehold on flat blocks.
I think you broke up a bit there, Dill. I only got the freehold blocks bit at the end of that.
Yeah, sorry. How do you value the freehold for a block of flats?
You normally do a multiplier based on the ground rent. So I think at the moment, most freehold ground rents are trading at 20 times income. So that's at ground rent. Now that changes drastically. There's a lot of intricacies that enter in there. So if there is a short lease, so if there's reversion, you add a degree of hope value for that as well. And that's very much dependent on location. If the freehold has been sold with the rights to manage and insure, then obviously you're going to be able to put a 10% service charge on a 10% management charge on top of the service charge and the management, or sinking fund, or whatever else you have running in on that. And you also get to put 10% on top of any insurance and things like that. So the block we were looking at, I think the insurance cost was, I think, a couple of £1,000 a year. So you're able to make an extra £200 a year, which sounds like a lot, but actually if you're only paying £15,000 for the property itself, an extra £200 on top of your £750 on top of your 10% on the service charge, which could be £5,000 or £6,000, it all adds up. And actually it then takes that 20 times multiply and it's worth a bit more. And obviously there are other things you can do in terms of you can when you have contractors going in and you're putting a Section 20 together, you can leverage that as well. So there's a lot of different points. Bear in mind, not all freeholds come with the right to manage and insure. Sometimes that's sold off to a management company, and actually, if you don't have the knowledge and experience, sometimes it is better to maybe not even pick those up yourself if they have been sold, if the rights to manage and insure have been shifted elsewhere. But if you are more of a sophisticated investor and you've dealt with freehold ground rents previously, then looking for the ones with the right to manage and insure is definitely a bonus. There's a plus to that. But yeah, so normally if it's a vanilla freehold ground rent and they're all on, I don't know, 96-year leases or 115-year leases or whatever that may be, then 20 times income is fair.
Great, thanks. And is it possible to get financing on freeholds, or is that one of the?
If you have a portfolio, if you have a large enough portfolio, I'd say anywhere 25 to 35 units and above, and 5% or 10% of your portfolio is freehold ground rents, then you can get some finance. The problem with the freehold ground rents is, in general, the majority of them are going to be under £100,000, and even more than that, the greater majority are going to be under £40,000. And there's a lot of mortgage restrictions on properties below £100,000, and some, and even greater ones below £40,000 or £45,000. The biggest concern here is, if you were looking to get finance on it, you're not actually buying. Okay, you're buying the fabric of the building and the income of the tenants within that. Bear in mind, all they're doing is they're leasing it from you, but you don't have. It's very difficult for banks to mortgage. You may be able to get some private investor finance, but what kind of yield are you going to return them? Unless you're doing something quite sexy like what I've been discussing, there probably isn't a great deal or degree of finance available for it, I'm afraid. So there are obviously freehold companies, there are massive ones that have like 5,000 or 6,000 freeholds under their control. They have finance in place for that, because that's a business. They have a business finance in place for that, not just a property finance. You understand that? You see the distinction there, Dill, yeah?
Yeah, no, that's really good. And one final trilogy to the question. Are freeholds going to take because you can't get finance on those, and I'm guessing people who hold it might need to sell, are they going to take a knock in their value, or are they unaffected by recession?
Pretty much unaffected. Pretty much unaffected. I think the only part of a freehold ground rent sale which is affected by recession is, and to the positive, is if there is a reversion. So if there is a short lease flat and in a recession, the leaseholder approaches you as the freeholder and says, oh no, it's actually to the negative if you're the freeholder. Because if in the recession, the property values in general reduce, and when the surveyor goes to value what the new lease, so the extended lease of that flat is worth, it's going to be worth less, which means the extension cost is going to be less than what you would have got in a growing market. So if you're looking at buying a short lease flat, now is a good time to do it, because when they're valuing it, they're valuing the flats at the current value, or if you wait a couple of months, at a lower value. So then your cost to extend is less. Now that may only be less by a couple of £1,000s, or depending on the area, maybe tens of thousands of pounds. But it is a good time to start looking at short leases, in my opinion. I did so in the 2008 crash, and when there was a bit of a wobble in 2016, I bought another couple and did quite well out of those because of the uncertainty of value. But leading more into this marketplace, I think short lease flats are a good investment opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
On that note, okay, thank you, Dill. That was fantastic. That was great. Okay, we have a question here for yourself, Ranjit. Okay, what I'm gonna Jay. Normally we start with Ranjit doing his motivational thing within. So
I love those.
Do that. But before Ranjit goes, the next question is, what advice would you give someone buying a flat where the freeholder has gone into liquidation and the lease has to be extended because it's under 65 years. You can also cover when there's a missing freeholder, but just hold it there, let Ranjit come, and then you can start with that question. Okay, Ranjit, over to you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ranjit from Property Investor News. Please listen carefully. I want you to listen to this carefully and ask yourself why. Businesses don't fail, people who run them do. So ask yourself, why is that? And listen to the rest of what I'm going to say now. Education is the only weapon to be successful. No matter what business you're in, property is no different. Question for you, am I going or am I growing through life? Now ask yourself, how much have I grown since the lockdown, and be true to yourselves. Time is no excuse. Prepare yourself for the changes, challenges, and opportunities ahead. Become educated, knowledgeable, and informed investors. Our publication, Property Investor News, provides you analysis, news, research on property investments. Also updates on mortgages, finance, auction, legal matters, and much, much more. Subscribe to Property Investor News, receive 3 free issues, and a free book, Before the Hammer Falls, written by our good friend Jay Howard, smile, and Piotr Rusnik, his co-partner. To subscribe, just follow the link, instructions in the chat box. And again, remember, businesses don't fail, people who run them do. So be educated, be knowledgeable, be informed, and also dig your well before you're thirsty. Otherwise, look what happened to the dinosaurs. They didn't read, they ended up going out of business and extinct. And this is what's happening with a lot of businesses nowadays also. They're getting extinct because they didn't stay up to the trends and up to date with everything. So follow the instructions in the chat box. Back to you, Sam. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ranjit. It's always very inspirational to listen to you. Yeah. So okay, Jay, short leases again. Yeah, you remember the question?
It's the freeholder is in liquidation. So this is interesting. It depends at which point in liquidation they're at and what their reason for liquidation is. So if a receiver has been appointed, you can approach the receiver, and you can approach the receiver with two hats on, either to buy the freehold, in which case you become the freeholder and you can extend your own lease at nil value because you'll be the freeholder, or you can approach the receiver to extend the lease. And obviously they'll be motivated to extend the lease because they're going to want to get some capital back into or back for the creditors of the company. So it's a very easy process to go down. You just have to know where to look. And if you don't know where to look, you can, for the most part, the receiver will probably write to you as the leaseholder to say that they're taking over from the freeholder, and they'll be writing to any management companies and insurance companies, letting them know that the freeholder's gone into administration and they're handling the asset from here. So a receiver just steps into the boots of the freeholder. So the fact they've gone into receivership isn't actually an issue. Sometimes actually you're instead of dealing with a person, you're actually dealing with someone who's distanced from the property. You know, they're not emotionally connected to it, so it's far easier to negotiate yourself a deal with the receiver. So I would see that as a positive if you've done your homework correctly in advance. Now, I think, is that an appropriate answer? I can't remember who asked it, but hopefully that was appropriate, an appropriate answer. If you want more clarity, just feel free to ask for anything that wasn't very clear into the question box. So for an absentee freeholder, that's a very different situation. So an absentee freeholder can come in well, not just in two ways, but the two more common ways are that the freeholder was owned personally by a human being, and that human being has passed away, and potentially that human being didn't have a will, or no one knows that they owned it, and it's just sitting there and it's not being managed, it's just in the ether. The other way it happens is if a company owns it, and they've either been struck off, or it's closed down, or again the owners of the company have passed away, and it's just, maybe it's sitting with the official solicitor or the official receiver, and it is yet to be handled. Now, it will go to either party depending on which situation. So just remember, just because it's an absentee freeholder where there's a death, or where the company is no longer trading, those are fairly easy things to approach because they go into two different directions. The other type of absentee freeholder is a real pain in the backside, and that is one where the freeholder is a person, and then they move, not just down the road or to a different county or a different town, but they move abroad. Some freeholders like to become absent because they like to devalue the asset, or they like to, and the reason they devalue the asset is because they want the individual leaseholders to sell the leases back to them. It's a rather old and tired technique, but a lot of them, and they also become absentee because it makes it harder for them to sell the properties to anyone else, especially if they need a mortgage. So what they do is they become absent to frustrate any potential sale, to reduce the value, and then to go back and try and buy the component assets at a discount to market value. It's a rather tired and dirty trick, but that does form part of the absentee freeholder. Those are normally the three main types.
Okay. Yeah, I think it looks like tonight is all about lease and lease extension. We've got one here on Facebook saying about lease. If you were selling a freehold, if you sold out the company, just the shares, and a new director takes over, do you have the obligation to inform the leaseholders that you are selling the shares?
I've spoken about this previously. Yes, I've spoken about this previously, and what I will say is opinion is very much divided. Technically, you only really have to notify the leaseholders when there's a change in ownership. Now, if it's a company that owns it and the company name doesn't change, just the directorship changes, then technically there is no disposition of the asset. Therefore, you don't need to notify the leaseholders of. Technically, you don't have to notify them via the notices. That is what a freeholder's solicitor would tell you. Now, a leaseholder's solicitor would tell you something different. I have seen a couple of sales go through like that. I've seen one succeed, and I've seen one fail horrendously, miserably actually. One succeeded because, and it's really difficult. Bear in mind, running the structure like that is really very difficult because even if, let's say you're putting the freehold into auction, you're putting it into auction, even if your leaseholders reserve the right to buy it, they have to buy it at the price that you put in the notice, the Section 5B notice. If it sells for more at auction, they can obviously complete at that lower price. The chances are, if you're structuring that Section 5B notice correctly, you're putting it in at a price where no one's really going to be buying it too much above that. So it just depends on how smart you are. Now, if you decide to go down the route of selling shares in the company, be very, very aware of the fact that that is an absolutely highly risky activity. When you're buying the shares of a company, you're buying all of the liabilities of that company. So, and it's not a quick process. It's very expensive with your solicitors and the company solicitors. You're going to want to have historical accounts. You're going to want to make sure that the company hasn't become a guarantor for any leases or for any ASTs or for any other loans. You want to make sure that they haven't signed any personal, the company hasn't signed any other kind of guarantee. You want to make sure that there are no outstanding tax liabilities going back up to 6 years. You want to do all of these things. It is really not worth it, in my opinion. In terms of the cost of the legals and all the other stuff, it's just not worth it. Serve the notices, sell it and buy it. Just keep it simple. If you try and frustrate a system, especially when selling the freehold, because the process of selling the freehold is really very strict. It's laid out in law in very clear terms. The process is very clean and clear, and the law doesn't like to be frustrated. And what you're talking about there is a loophole, but it isn't a workable one. It certainly isn't a quick and cost-effective exercise. You know, if you think, you know, you may be getting more for your freehold by selling it in that way, actually, it probably it's negated by the level of costs of your solicitor trying to structure that whole process.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents. That may not be very helpful for you, but if you speak to 10 solicitors, 10 will say it's fine, 10 will say it's not. And
Great. Okay, I think Salish just said he keeps cutting out when he unmutes himself. So I don't know why that's happened. Salish, do you want to try it again? Okay, he says every time when he unmutes himself, he cuts out. Maybe, I think the internet is generally quite difficult everywhere now. You want to try again now, Salish? Okay, then Jay, just I can guess what you're going to say, but auctions and estate agents, if someone really wants to sell their property now, what would you advise?
I'm probably like you, Sam. I'm probably the most biased person when it comes to that question.
Yeah.
So I always say that because it's fair that everyone understands how biased I am, so they can take my opinion with a pinch of salt or not. I've been an estate agent. I haven't been a lettings agent or managing agent. I've been an estate agent and I've been an investor agent. You know, working for an investment house. So I've kind of touched all those parts there. And the dynamics of a property with an estate agent is, you know, the estate agent is probably working against 3 or 4 other agents that you've got to come and have a look at your property, and they're all going to come in at the best level, the highest price to get your instruction. They're going to tell you that's what it's worth. Bear in mind, not all estate agents are RICS surveyors. So the value that they're giving you is based on comparables. It's the same kind of situation that you could get anywhere, really. It's most of the time it's a number that's pulled out of thin air just to get your beautiful looking property into their lovely little window, so that people who are window shopping on Saturday and Sunday can point, look at it and arrange a viewing, you know, knock on the walls, turn the taps on to see if there's hot water, and not really do much. Obviously that dynamic changes in an upward transitioning market, because you can actually get a good deal through an estate agent. The thing I don't like about it is it's a vendor expectation management system. They will come in, let's say, you know, they've told you your property's worth 300 and they put it on the market at 325. Traditional estate agency approach. Then after 3 months, the guide or the offer or the open market value price goes down to 300. Then, you know, nothing really happens. It goes down to 290, 280, and you can be on the market for 12, 18 months. The beauty of the auction, and this is why I've been trading at auction for so long, why I loved working for Auction House London, working in that environment, is the auction would go in at 220. And then through competitive bidding, get you 285, 290, 300. Sometimes will even beat the estate agent's value. And the reason for that is it meets everyone's expectations evenly, if you appreciate what a guide and reserve and what true market value is. Because what it's doing is it's opening up to not just people who go past that estate agent's window, or maybe if the estate agent used Rightmove or Zoopla, not all of them do. Some of them just use their own website. What I like about auctions is they leave no stone unturned. Now, there's some auctions that only send out a catalog, don't really market on the property portals, but they're very few and far between. But for the most part, and this is speaking from personal experience, they will be marketing Rightmove, Zoopla, they will be marketing out to their database. Auction House London, for one, segregate their their auction listing into specific sections that you may be interested in, and you get a personalized mini catalog based on that, which I think was a brilliant idea. They do obviously for sell boards and all that other stuff, but they just do everything. They still write out and they canvass local roads and local owners and things like that. There's no stone unturned. And because they've managed your expectations by saying, you know, worst case scenario, your reserve is here. This is the worst case scenario. But if we do our job properly, if enough people see it and they see the value in it, and they see actually, no, I'm not going to get it at that price, but actually it's worth about this, and I don't mind bidding up to here. That's a better point for you. That's a positive transition. The transition goes up. If you think at estate agency, how many times your property sells above, like massively above the price at which you put it in at? It happens very rarely. Sometimes you get it at the price you put the offer out at. Sometimes it's a little bit less. But I would say 90%, 95% of auction lots that are sold are normally sold above the guide price. And that's a positive sell trajectory. I prefer that. And it's one of those things, you get speed and you get certainty, you don't always get price. With estate agents, you may get price, you don't get certainty, and you don't get speed. I would prefer to get 2 out of the 3 rather than 1 out of the 3, especially if you have holding costs or bridging finance. It's so much quicker through the auction. Again, I'm extremely very biased, but yeah, that's my experience, and that's almost 18 years worth of experience talking there. So
you're absolutely spot on. There's a property that we have in N18, Edmonton. We went in, myself and Charles, we offered them 350 reserve and a guide, of course, lower than that. An estate agent went and gave them 450 on the market. The highest offer that he's presented to them so far, subject to mortgage, is 395. So I said to this family, how can someone put a number of 450 in your mind and then start offering you 370, 380? We were very confident that at 350, we would achieve 400 plus. But the estate agent has gone high, and he just keep, like what Ranjan calls a falling knife. The knife just keeps falling, going downstairs. So yeah, so I think you got it spot on. Like you say, we're very biased, but just to, again, to support your point, most people here are on our database exactly on the 20th of April. RT sent out an email requesting properties for sale. The 2 people that I spoke to on that day, this lot number 2, yeah, and lot number 3, I spoke to them for the first time on the 20th, and I have all the communication to prove it. That's the first time that I spoke to them. From the 20th of April 2020 to today, how long is it?
Yeah, it's a month. It's a month. Yeah.
These 2 properties were sold today at network auction. The owner of this property, lot number 3, I mean, he wrote a very flattering message to me today. I'll only share it with this group maybe in the future, but after I asked him, he said he's never seen anything like this. He actually wrote in trying to rent this flat, and I had a chat with him, turned him around to sell it, and within a month, he sold the flat. And it's amazing. Any estate agent will still be trying to type the terms to come and get them signed 4 weeks. It takes them 4 weeks to get the terms signed, and then maybe 3 more weeks to get all the pictures ready to go to market. Within 4 weeks of me speaking to him, the property is gone into auction, it's sold, he completes. He's got 28 days, but the chap who bought this property, he wants it done quickly. He owns like everything that's around here. So he wants it done really quickly. So yes, auctions, and I think coming out of the lockdown with the current market, there'll be quite a lot of stock coming to the market. So people want to sell. You want a medium where there's a committed buyer and a committed seller. And the only place where you can meet those 2 is at auction. But estate agents are no. You just don't know what you don't know when you go to an estate agent. So yeah, so I think that was a great pitch on that. Let me see if, yeah, that's why I thought, let me share the success story, the auction story. Let me see if Salish has come back to...
Well, we've got a couple of questions as well, if you want to go through those in the interim, Sam.
Yeah, you could just pick one up. Let's see which one.
Okay. N. Clark, what do you suggest to do about this scenario? Leaseholder with less than 70 years can't afford to extend and may lose the property to the bank. The freeholder would rather buy the flat back, but the leaseholder resistance and would seem rather than let the bank take it back. How do you deal with that? If you already own the flat and it's less than 70 years, and let's say your mortgage is coming up to term, when you refinance with that mortgage provider, they will refinance with you on the condition that you've served your Section 42 notice to extend the lease, and that the freeholder has come back to you. And then what they will do is, obviously, the property is worth more with the lease extended, and they will normally they will facilitate that extension cost. So you normally won't get to the point where the leaseholder is distressed enough that they would ordinarily want to sell it to the freeholder, unless the freeholder is coming up with a good price. So again, I think that may be a really very specific scenario, but I wouldn't see that playing out. So let's say you had an 85-year lease, and that was 18 years ago, and it's now 67 years, and you're coming up to refinance. All you really need to do is say, look, I'm going to refinance. They're going to say, well, your lease is below managed value. And you go, well, not a problem, because actually when the lease is extended, the property is worth £150,000 more, and the cost of the extension is only £70,000. Back, like, perfect. We'll refinance you, and then you can take out that £70,000 and extend the lease, because they don't want the asset to crystallize. So it would go that way. Obviously, you are in a position at any point to try and negotiate a sale of your flat back to the freeholder. But if you're doing it because you think that as an existing owner you won't be able to get a mortgage or funding available to extend that lease with the existing mortgage provider, I would say that would be incorrect. You do have a greater chance of getting finance if you own it and it's ticking down in years. So I hope that's helpful for you, N. Clark. That, but if there's any change to, if there's any other scenario that you want to kind of investigate with that, Sam has my details. I can leave my details in the chat, or you can ask another question. I'm not going anywhere just yet.
Yeah, you can just put the details in the chat, but if not, I'll give it to her. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So then, Anthony, hi Jay. I discovered that some properties and auctions are sold well beyond the value in the area, and this happens due to rich people overbidding. What are your thoughts? Now, Anthony, I'm going to give you some truth here. This is real talk. It is very rare, and it does happen, for people who buy property at auction, but for them to overpay. Now, what you're seeing here, when you see someone potentially paying £50,000 or £80,000 more than you would pay, is actually what they're planning on doing with the property is likely to yield them a greater return than what you're planning on doing with the property, which is why one property may have different uses. So, for instance, if you were looking at buying the property to just turn it into a single let, it's only worth £250,000. But if someone is buying it to turn it into a 5 or 6 bedroom HMO, it's probably worth £400,000 or £600,000 to them. So they can pay more for that asset than you can. There is also an argument to say it depends on the type of buyer that you are. If you are a portfolio buyer, actually the price that you pay for the asset now doesn't really matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because over the term that you own the property for, its value becomes, or the overprice you pay for it becomes negated by time and the asset increasing in value, and the yield and the money that you get in the interim, and all those different types of things. If you're looking at flipping or looking at trading, the price does become really very intrinsic to you. And to be honest, most people who overpay for the asset, I wouldn't say are rich people. I would say they're normally uneducated people who don't understand what they're doing. I saw a property sell at auction. It was a short lease property. It had under 21 years. So between 21 years and 7 years, so it was about 12 or 13 years left on the lease. they paid massive money for it. And obviously, once a property goes below 80 years or 70, 80 years, that's marriage value. Once it goes below 50 years, it then becomes really very difficult to value because the lease extension calculators do not calculate leases below 50 years. Once it goes below 21 years, the cost of the extension hikes up again. Once it goes below 7 years, it's no longer treated as a lease. The nature of the lease changes, and then the cost to extend that jumps again. And they must have paid at least £100,000 over. The only way to have extended, to increase the value of that flat, there were two things they could have done. And I still think they may have overpaid by about £30,000 or £40,000. Is yes, they could have gone in for the lease extension and added the intrinsic value that way. But there was the potential to move the kitchen into the living room, to make it an open plan living room reception room, and then turn the previous kitchen into another bedroom, so turning it from a 2-bedroom flat to a 3-bedroom flat, therefore adding value. But in order to do that, you would have had to have had the freeholder's consent. You would have had to have, would you have needed planning or just building regs? You would have had to have gone through some approach, but because it's the internal manipulation of the building, you're not moving any walls, you're not doing anything like that, I don't think planning would have been required. You know, there are people that pay for something because they have a longer term view, or because they're planning on doing something different to the property that you wouldn't have thought of. And that would have enabled them to have paid more because they were able to pay more because they were going to create more out of it. So I always advise people to not take the approach that someone's overpaid for it because they have money to overpay for it. No one has money to overpay for an asset. There are some people who are able to pay more because they're able to do more, or because their reason for investing it enables them to pay more in the short term, and then maybe refinance and do other things to actually exit, but maybe leave a bit more money in the deal. Some people like leaving more equity in a deal because, you know, those of us who learned mistakes from 2007, 2008 crash are always quite comfortable to leave more money in the deal because, or leave more equity in the deal, because they know that banks were downvaluing everything and people were being put into negative equity. So I don't see that happening in this crash because the different type of helicopter funding that's come through, the quantitative easing that's come through, and the way the government are dealing with or talking to the banks or nudging the banks is slightly different to how they reacted in 2008. But I still think it's a very important it's a mindset point. The very good example of the freehold ground rent that myself and Piotr were looking at buying in February, where we were like £45,000 our max, and then someone pays 2 times that. I don't think they overpaid. I think they had a different risk appetite on their money. I think they maybe had more money where they were able to put that money at risk. But I think it's a short-term risk. I think those permitted development rights, which they've been talking about for 4 or 5 years, are going to come in sooner rather than later. And that person is absolutely laughing. You know, if they paid £100,000, including costs for that freehold ground rent, and then they spend £400,000, you know, with the planning and the development and doing the works and all that kind of stuff. Let's say worst case, they put £600,000 into it and the GDV is 1.8. That's £1.2 million profit. I don't know what that looks like on a return scale of return on capital invested, capital employed, or however people want to work it out. But the GDV is exponential. It's easily, that's like 200%. I think return, isn't it? If you spent 600,000, it's worth, and your profit is 1.2. That's 200%. That's insane for a development. So that person didn't overpay. They just have a different risk appetite, and they were able to put a different amount of money at risk. Remember, every time you invest, you're investing money into risk, not just equity, but into risk. Once you understand that, you're laughing. And then you're able to appreciate how other people operate, how other people do their figures, how other people have different appetites to achieve different things in property. All of those things are important. It's not just about having other people having more money and being able to spend more money, because I guarantee rich people, or the richer you are, the less you are in a mindset or in a position or in a practice of overspending for stuff. By and large, you know, you obviously like your expensive things, but you're not going to overpay for major assets like that, I would have thought.
And in terms, I mean, for completeness to that response, which is very comprehensive, last but not least, there is the emotional aspect. where most of the properties that were sold in Wembley, there's one, this guy lives in Holland and he wants to send his family to live in the UK. His friend lives on that street. The wife will be here with kids. He wants them next to his friend. It was a coincidence that there was a property at auction. He was going to win that property at auction. It doesn't matter who else was in there. He was so determined that he was going to win. And you have families that want to buy on the same street as their grandparents. When you have kids, you can't put a price of childcare financially, and the fact that you can have quite a few more nights out in central London if you live on the same street with grandparents. Many people will put a 50K premium to that and pay to buy, and that's one of the things that we say when we put properties at auction. We go to viewings. You chat to people. You try and pick some some intelligent information why they're buying to see how motivated they are to buy. So these are some of the aspects why someone might pay more than
the community purchase is really important. If you are investing in an area where there is normally one strong demographic, so one strong community, you will find that likelihood is that if there is a buyer who's paying more than you, they're likely to be of that community or that demographic, and you're not going to outbid someone like that, because their value is being in their community. Their value is being next to family, as Sam says. So they're happy to pay £20,000 or £30,000 more because they're going to live in the property for the next 20, 30 odd years. And at that point, they become like a portfolio or a pension investor, where it doesn't really matter. The price at point of purchase is immaterial because it washes its face through capital appreciation and ownership over that period of time. So once you understand that, they haven't overpaid. They've paid what they perceive the value to be.
Okay, I think Selig says he doesn't have any question anymore, so it must have been answered. Well done. And I think I'm going to probably invite, see if there's any more questions. There are quite a few more on Facebook, but it's we'll deal with those ones at a later stage. For now on, the last question I always like to ask is, for the is there anyone? Yeah, to ask if what question do you think the audience should have asked, which they haven't asked, in terms of exit strategies?
In terms of exit strategies, I think a good question that I've been asked previously is, how do you know which exit strategies are applicable for that property? Or how do you, another question I was asked is like, I've talked about how I take a property on and I run the exit strategies concurrently. So if something happens and I have to drop the exit strategy, I could just move on to the next one, without any delay, without any issue. And how do I do that without incurring additional cost or loss in profit? Those are normally two good questions that I've been asked previously about exit strategies.
Okay, I think there's someone that's I think let me see what question she's sent a question through. I'm trying to open up some file here. Just see, did she put it into the I don't know if she sent it into my WhatsApp. Just bear with me. Let me see where she's put that. Yeah, she's actually sent it to my WhatsApp. Actually, let me see what she WhatsApp to me. Okay, I was in the webinar. Jay, is it possible to share with me? Oh, is it possible to share with me the guide price and how guide price are set? Okay, she's actually sent a WhatsApp asking, can you share with her how guide price and reserves are set for properties? Yeah,
sure. And there is a rule of thumb. It isn't applicable across the board. So treat this with a pinch of salt. But it is, generally speaking, a good rule of thumb. So the auction reserve is designed to be anywhere between 15 to 30% below the comparable market evidence for that property in that area. That's how they set the reserve. And the guide has to be set within 10% of the reserve. So a property can look as attractive as 20 or 25% below market value, and some of them don't. Sometimes a vendor is stubborn and wants to go at like 5 or 10% below market value. You tend to see those not sell, and then they have to manage their expectation and come back and reduce their price. So sometimes you can see that they will have they will have properties re-entered, and then the price drops an extra 20 or 50,000 pounds. But generally speaking, that's how it's done. It's done like that because it is it's allowing people to look at a property which has an appreciable discount to market value, and then attracts bidders in that respect. And that's the way auction works. It starts low and it builds up, rather than starts up and then drops down. I hope that's a good enough answer. It's a fairly simple one, but it really is, as a rule of thumb, it is anywhere between that 15 and 30%. Obviously there are exceptions. So for assured or regulated tenants, those will be 50 to 60% below market value, and that's because of residual values more than a discount. But I think Elvis had his hand up, and I think he's been added to the call. So I think he's unmuted himself as well. So
Yeah,
Elvis,
okay.
you have a question?
Thank you again, Jay. Thank you for the nice, good presentation and for this wonderful time. Yeah, I just wanted to add something quickly. In terms of development, for the one looking at development in this season with what's happening. So I'm not sure, you mentioned earlier on about the option of social housing and things like that, but that's something that probably comes across a bit new to me, because we just before the current pandemic, we had a look at the land for its 17 dwelling with a 17 dwelling planning permission, and the vendor was asking for 350. Because the discussion started before the pandemic, basically came back again to us recently, and is still asking for the same price. But then the concern for us is in the direction of like, what happens if the development goes ahead and with what's going on, maybe the property market goes down or anything like that, and we are not able to meet our costs. But when you mentioned social housing, I thought probably that could be another way out. I don't know if you could expand on that in terms of guidance for us.
Yeah, so there is, you kind of have to have a relationship with the social housing suppliers, and there are some really good people that talk about social housing out there. You've got Sue Sims, who operates in Birmingham. She does a social housing course, which I've only ever heard positive things from. So you can Google her. She's really very interesting. There's a guy called Ashley Richmond in Manchester, and he's, I don't know, can't call him really a project manager, but he does massive developments for developers, and then he already has the social housing contract in place at the point of completion. So it's worth having a Google for those two people. They're doing some really very interesting things. In terms of me, it's not normally something that I look at, so I don't have a great deal of experience in the social housing market. I think if you are doing a development to rent to as a build to rent to social housing, then you really need to start making contact with social housing providers in that area. That's very important. With regards to your vendor not wanting to reduce their price, there are a number of ways that you can reposition the situation if they're not willing to accept anything less. This all comes down to the viability of the deal. So only have a look at this option if you think that the deal is too good to just walk away from. And just bear in mind, Elvis, my opinion is there is no deal that is too good to walk away from. If there's a point of unreasonableness where the situation needs to be managed, I walk away. But if you're quite keen on it, bear in mind, try as much as possible to never be a motivated buyer. You know, remember, you're looking at motivated sellers. You don't need to be overly motivated yourself. But what I would recommend is something that the corporates have coined the anti-embarrassment clause, or what is more commonly referred to as an overage clause or an overage provision. So let's say that you decide to go ahead at 350 for this land with planning permission, but you're only, let's say you say that, well, look, I'm only going to pay you 350 if I reach the GDV of X, whatever that may be. You know, your X may be 1.4 million. I don't know the area. I don't know what you're looking at. So we'll use arbitrary figures. But if you don't reach that 1.4 million, you only pay 300,000. But if you meet that GDV, you will pay them the 350. But if the resales and the revalues come at less, you don't get to that 1.4 million, then you pay the backup price, which is £300,000. So basically, you're almost joint venturing with the seller, or you're basically saying to them, you're not going to see all of your profit now, all of your value now. You'll only see it at the point of either revaluation once the building is built, or based on the sales of the building once the whole building is sold off. So once all 17 units are sold, and that's a really good way. You know, if the current owner is stipulating that actually they think it's worth a lot more, you can say, okay, we'll put your money where your mouth is. I will give you 300 now, and if I reach 1.4 million on a GDV, I will give you the additional £50,000. And that's a really good way to reduce your risk element very early on in the purchase process, and then level it up later on. Because at that point, once you're profited out, you don't mind, because you've de-risked the purchase, and hopefully, if you worked your numbers correctly, you'll still be in quite a bit of profit with that £40,000 factored in. Again, when you're structuring that kind of arrangement, Elvis, you have to structure that overage point, your GDV point, at the right kind of level, so that if you do need to pay that £50,000 at the point of exit, that's not impacting your profit margin. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Perfect. Is that a good answer for you?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, just a spelling for, is it Achi Roshi in Manchester, the one in Manchester?
Yeah, so Ashley, Ashley, and then it's Ashley, I'm pretty sure it's Ashley Richmond. Yeah.
Richmond, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
You'll be able to find both of those people on Facebook easily. Both have public profiles, both in property, both always ready to have a chat with people about social housing, what it is that they do. They're very friendly. They're co-hosts of Partners in Property, so I know them well. So I can guarantee they'll speak to you.
Okay, so Elvis, if you do forget, just ping us. We'll send you. So she does have quite a lot of Facebook Live, so you can see her all the time on
yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just before we go, just trying to underpin what Jay is saying about multiple exit strategy. This is a property that was on auction a couple of months ago, which it's in Waltham-on-Thames, a very nice part of London. It was on guided 275 to 300, and on the ground floor, well, it's been split into two flats, but no, that is not split. On the ground floor, they had a protected tenant or regulated or protected tenants in place. So the vendor had passed away. It was a probate, part of a probate portfolio, but the top flat was actually vacant. So I took quite a few clients around to see it, trying to get them to buy the property. My client didn't bid as much, but the exit strategies that I was suggesting: one, the tenant on the ground floor was paying regulated rents of £700 a month for the one-bedroom flat on the ground floor. The top, very nice flat, was actually vacant. If you look at the top right-hand side here, you see next door, the other side of the semi, they've done a loft extension to get a 3-bedroom flat in that loft, and that 3-bedroom flat would actually sell over 250. So my recommendation then was for a client to buy this at maybe, say, I was saying to bid up to about 300, but it actually sold for 295. My client then only bid to 275 and didn't want to go much higher than 275. He wanted at the lower range of it, because usually when you see companies that put their guide price as a range, usually the reserve will be at the top end of the range in some cases. Anyway, but with this one, the possible exits of this property, one is to either buy it, split titles, and then develop the first floor into a big 3-bedroom flat, and then sell it, maybe make all your money, and then keep the ground floor as profit, which, because the guy is regulated, it's a mature guy, you wait and see it through. Or you can do that and then go downstairs and buy him out for about 10, 20,000. Because if you think paying £700 a month is not a lot of money for that he's actually saving, because he can actually move somewhere and get a 1-bedroom flat for maybe 900 in that area. So he's saving £200. if you multiply 200 by say 5-10 years, it's not a lot of money. But if you came in and said to him, you're going to be paying £700 anyway in this property, I would give you £15,000 straight away, and maybe 3 months or 4 months of free rents while you look for somewhere to go. And I think those kind of deals, they can go through. If the person takes it, they can leave and you have a second flat. But even without a person living, I could show you the person who bought the flat, what they did with it. They did nothing to the flat apart from split titles and put the top flat back on auction the next month, and they sold it for 221. So what that means, they own the ground floor flat now for just about 70,000. That is what we talk about, multiple exit strategies. So when you see a property, when I always say, people who read the Bible, they make a claim that every time they read it, they see it differently. I think on that note, I think auction catalogs are like our own Bible, because every time when I look through a catalog and I look at a property, I see something different that you can do with it, which again is what we emphasize when we do the auction workshop, that you need to be able to see a property and have 2, 3, or 4 possible exits. And I think actually every auction workshop that we had, we always mention, Jay, that everyone had to come on this, and of course Ranji is always there to offer the book, which is always fantastic. But you have to think, how many possible exits do I have every time you look at a property? Don't just stick to one. And again, there are quite a few other properties here with multiple kind of exits that you can look at. But Jay, thanks, thank you for the fantastic evening. Is there any more questions from anyone, or we round up? Is there any hands up at all? Okay, so I think Jay, yeah, we've actually just hit the 9:30 mark, which is at the time which we say in terms of the panel. Thank you for taking your time to be here with us. We certainly look forward to having you on again sometime soon if we can do anything. And yeah, so drive back home safely. Yeah, and hopefully, if anyone else, there's someone that's put their hand up. I was gonna say right now on. Okay, let me, Jay, let me just see what Ibrahim wants to say.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Ibrahim.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, so I didn't see your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to see at the end of the webinar here. You just said you want to contact me about the area in Scarborough about any HMOs. Do you know, like, you have my details so you can contact me about them?
Oh yeah. No, I'll have your details. Yes, I'll have your details from because you registered, so I can have your details from the system, and yes, I'll really contact you tomorrow. Or if you want to talk shortly, I can call you.
Up to you. I'm free now as well.
If not, tomorrow will be fine. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I thought it was something different. I thought it was something to Jay.
I just want to thank Jay as well for all the information that he gave us, and really congratulations, man. You start at my age. You started 17, and you have so much going on in your life, same as me at the moment as well. But that's what life looks like to me. Okay, you know.
Great.
Well, good luck, man. Good luck.
Yeah. Great. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
So at this juncture, I'll ask anyone that wants to give a shout out for what they do. So Jay, at any time you can like a typical networking event, you can stagger. Oh, Ranjit, what about the bar? We can open the bar now. It's networking. Ranjit? Yeah. I think Ranjit is just about to open the bar. So once Ranjit opens the bar, and then it's all anyone that wants to. Yes. Yes, so the bar is open right now.
Ranjit, we have a question from someone asking how they can get the Property Investor News and the book. Do you want to just jump on and just confirm how people can get the Property Investor News magazine and the book, please?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. I have put a message in the chat box, and all you do is go onto our website, subscribe, and then send me an email that with your name, address, and the long reference number, and I will get the offer out to you. That will be 3 issues of Property Investor News magazine and Jay's book. The offer is not available on website, so this is just an event offer, which is how I bypass it.
Okay, so great. And Clark, do you want to tell us what you do? I'll just enable you to talk. Where is? Okay, so anyone that wants to say a shout out, if not, we if everyone's tired, because it's been a long day. Okay, let me see that. Oh, that's it. Okay, Jill, yes, you can talk. No.
Hi everybody. Great session, Jay. Really good stuff there. Just a little shout out. I've actually launched this week question time with the party wall guy every Tuesday at 2 p.m. So all your party wall questions more than welcome. I'll put the link in the chat box so you can, anybody who wants to register can come along and ask me any questions on party walls.
Okay, excellent. Yep. Anyone else got any announcement to make? Oh, okay. Anyone else got any announcement to make at all? Oh, yeah. Okay, so
does anyone mind if I tell people what I do? So,
oh yes. Oh no. Go on. Yes.
So at the moment, I provide auction consultancy. So we do full and half day consultancy. I also do due diligence reports on auction properties. So basic and advanced at 2 different prices. When the auctions were physically happening, we were doing auction day experiences for a minimum of 4 investors, maximum of 12, to attend with us on the day. We also do auction rescue. So if you've bought something, you've made a mistake, we try and find a way of repackaging that and reselling that for you without you losing any money or not that much money at all. And we also work as an expert witness if you have a complaint against an auction company and you needed help with the property ombudsman or any ongoing matters. We provide that service as well. We also have our auction day recorded, and we sell that recording off to people, and we also have the permitted development day recording. We sell that off for people as well, so that will be a nice little addition to what it is that Sam does, which is also really valuable. So we kind of all work in tandem, which is why Sam says whenever he talks about the auction day events that he holds, you know, you kind of need to do what we do as well, but it all kind of helps build into that as well. So if anyone, obviously don't forget the newsletter, that's free. And we also do coffee mornings. Every morning, a Facebook Live, myself and Piotr. And we normally have Ranjit and we have Sam on there with us. And we kind of talk about what we're doing in auctions or what's happening in the market. And that's all very much, at least the coffee mornings are free content. And the others are all on our website. So if you have any interest or you're looking at auction property, you're not sure what you're looking at, you need some help, just feel free to reach out and have a chat with us.
Right. One of the fantastic things, today has been a very long day for me from like 9 o'clock. And for some reason, I decided today to host standing up. So I've been standing up all day. But one thing that's kept me going, especially in the morning, when we had Jack Jiggins did a wonderful presentation about assisted sales. And he offered to give all the templates to anyone that wanted a copy of it. And the first question I asked him is, Jack, come on, you got something that's dear to you. Why are you sharing it out? And his answer was excellent. And I'm going to park that aside. The next speaker was Yemi, that you know, who had meetings with Yemi in your office before, your former office. Yemi. Yemi acquires lots of properties from very high net worth individuals abroad. So Yemi and I do the very similar thing where I buy for quite a lot of banks in Jersey. They instruct me. Funny enough, a new bank decided the product to sell on the African market. So they called Yemi to meet him one evening. And Yemi just called me, am I free? Let's meet up. And I went, he said, he introduced me to the guy and said he was busy, I should take the guy out. I asked him today saying, why? Why would you give it away? Most people would keep it to themselves. The point I'm sharing this today, people that are successful, they have an attitude of abundance. There's so much in business that people collaborate. Collaboration is the new C, not competition. it's collaboration. There's so much in the industry. There's a lot of business out there, and leadership is probably, I think, is overrated. At times to be the second follower. I always say, people call me auction expert, but when Jay and Piotr are in, I'm an auction scholar, because I learn a lot from the two of them every time. So we are there. One of the questions that was on Facebook for you, Jay, is about North and South. There seemed to be a massive rush for properties up north. Someone actually asked, what are your thoughts about that? And I can attest to that, because I've sold, between yesterday and today, I probably sold like 4 properties up north, starting from Warsaw, going all the way up to Darlington. So what are your thoughts about the up north?
Well, I think it's twofold. For the most part, up north, depending on area, your capital value for the asset is going to be less than the south, but also the yields are quite a bit higher. So if you're looking for a return on your money, maybe even single let or multi-let, you're going to get more bang for your buck the further north you go. And I think that's really very attractive for a lot of people. It used to be, and there was a massive change maybe 7 or 8 years ago, where you had London and the South investors only really invested in their region, or for the main part. And the reason they did that is because the capital appreciation was worth more than what the asset was yielding for. And then all of a sudden they started looking, north of the Watford Gap, and they started saying, wait, I can buy a 4-bedroom house for £120,000 and it's making a 12% yield. That's insane. I'm going to buy 100 of those. And that's what they started doing. And although there may not be that much capital appreciation, there is some depending on areas. Although there's not that much, the yield more than makes up for the fact that there's limited capital appreciation. I mean, the capital values tend to move down more than they move up over a 10 to 15 year cycle. But by and large, it's a good yield play. So if you're looking to like replace a job or employment income, then buying up north, if you have capital, actually makes a bit more sense.
Okay, excellent. Okay, great. We keep ending and starting again, right? When questions come through, I think now now unless it's a networking question, wow, Ranji, that's a big pine. Sound like you're about to jump in.
No, you've been busy today, Sam. You need a big pint.
Yeah, so you jump in and then you start drinking, having a pint. Yeah, that's a good one.
We're keeping you entertained, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Anyone else for networking? Is there anyone that wants to make any comment? So
I think Uwa has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Let me give him. You can just click him, allow him to talk. Okay.
Uwa, you can unmute yourself. How you doing? You all right?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. How you doing?
Very well, thanks, Jay. How are you?
It's good. I didn't know I knew so many people on the call. It's brilliant. Yeah, I'm good.
Really
How are you keeping?
Yeah, keeping very, very, very well. Thanks for all the content, man. As always, open, sharing honestly. You never fail to deliver, and really, really appreciate it. And guys, I left a comment on his book on Amazon, so go check it out. It's really, really wonderful auction book. Yes, yeah, you haven't paid me to say that, have you?
Oh, you. That's why I love you. How's the app going?
Yeah, it's going really well. That's what I wanted to talk about, actually, which is the thing I do. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm the founder of Valap.io. It's a deal stacking application. It's there to help people who are just starting out on their journey. We stack multiple strategies. So SA, buy-to-let, HMO, new build, conversion. And as Jay alluded to earlier during his discussion, that people, when they come to dispose of assets, forget certain costs that they need to factor in. And the app is really there to help you out. And there's an area info section as well that helps you look at what the sold prices in the area, what the sold prices are. So I would like anyone that's lacking in all those spreadsheets to come on the site, appraise your site, appraise your opportunities, and let's all help each other because it's really free for most people, but all your feedback feeds into one bucket and it helps everyone else. So I like to say it's herd stacking. So, you know, if you're lacking in anything, just come on. If you want a demo, just leave me a message on the site and I'll be quite happy to provide a demo. And before I leave, Sam, thank you so much for putting this on, both the morning session and this one. And Ranjit, always good to see you. Thank you, guys.
How much? What's your fee?
Thank you, Ua.
Yeah. So there's no real fee for your first five properties, and you can do as many strategies as you want on the 5. Anything beyond that, then that starts entering the commercial realm, and it's £5 per property, and you can do as many strategies and as many permutations as you want per property. So.
Okay, I'm not throwing in names, but I have companies like Sprift and a few other guys that give me complimentary use because they know I use it, and then I email it to clients who, oh, how did you get this valuation? So for giving me a free access, I think Sprift, they've got so many clients, because when I value people's properties and I send them a report from Sprift, they're like, oh, this looks good. Oh, where is this from? And then they end up booking it. So I'm not saying give me one free, but it might help you if you give me a free access. How about JJ? Was that good?
That's wonderful. Next time I won't put my hand up, right?
That's a nice sales trick.
So yeah, so you can. Yeah.
Do you know what, Sam? Yeah, I'll go one better. I'll do a bespoke one for you as well as the free stuff. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, that's good. Yeah, you don't know if you don't ask, you don't get it. Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
Ua, do yourself a favour and put the link to your app in the chat, because I think N Clark has just asked that. So if you put the link, they can go to whichever app store you have it in, or website, and they can have the benefit of checking it out for themselves.
Oh, sure, I'll do that now. Thank you.
That's good.
I think Dill and Elvis have put their hands up. So guys, if one of you wants to jump on first and ask the question.
Yeah, Ranjit's giving free access to his bar as well, I think.
Wow. How's he managing that?
Well, it's a virtual bar, so you could have free access.
Right, it's like living in prohibition days, isn't it? At the moment, no bars, no clubs, no pubs.
No, actually, alcohol consumption's up by 20%. They reckon the effects are going to last a generation.
Yeah, I imagine alcohol and pregnancies are up 20% at this
no,
point.
No, the pregnancies are coming afterwards. It's like a baby boomer thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Saudi Arabia, where people go and drink in these American compounds. So maybe you never know. So they might have some compounds here, like Ranjit's compound.
So just to say, Sam, you can have a free session. You can have as many free sessions at my question time as you like.
Oh yeah, well, okay. So thank you. Now I'm Mr. Freebie, so I'm quite happy.
No problem, mate.
Yeah. So I think, okay, Elvis.
No, great session, Jay. Well done. Thank you very much. Really good stuff.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, Elvis, I think you got your hands up. Oh, were you just pulling a pine? Maybe you just put his hand up to get a pine, actually. Yeah. You know that at times when you go to a pub and it's so busy, you stand at the back, you have to put your hand up. You cannot see, everyone is coming and they're getting served and you're waiting. So I think maybe Ranjit, pour him a pine, will you?
Actually, you know, on Amazon, you used to buy those hang-up backgrounds, and now like the plastic sheets that you could do for webinars. I bought a few before, but now with this virtual stuff, I think that business has gone to pot as well, because everyone just puts in really nice virtual backgrounds.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, Jay, did you see my background?
Yeah, I love that background. That's a brilliant background. I remember that question time. That was a good one, because you had Rick Gannon, the HMO guy, and then you had Mike Bristow. Just that was so much knowledge on that panel. It was great fun.
I've done this. Some people that came, they thought, oh, I was actually at the day of the property question time. I used this background here, which most people thought I was actually at the auction house, and I think I used this one. Yeah. So they thought I was actually at the auction house.
You haven't got a background for Holiday Inn, then, have you?
Sorry.
You haven't got a background for Holiday Inn, have you? You should have put that one up today.
No. I have it. I have the Holiday Inn one as well. Yeah. So yeah. Good. Oh yeah. Oh, got yeah. Okay, great guys. I think Jay probably has a childcare duties tonight.
Yeah, all good guys.
Yeah, so you're gonna be a frontline staff tonight, yeah.
Randy, I remember when Richard gave that interview at that I remember that auction. Randy's got another background on. I remember that auction. That was a good sale. That auction. That was towards the end of the event, and that was still quite a full room. No,
Yeah.
I missed the auction.
Yeah, no, I think it's I think the auction will definitely come back. It will come back, and I think this is the one that actually made people actually think I was actually in auction house, where they okay. Anyway, so guys, I think it's been a great evening.
Okay, guys, take care.
Unless Peter wants to do a closing remark. Okay. Okay. No, Peter. No, he's not there. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Sorry.
Sam, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now, Elvis. How are you doing? Did you have one last question?
Yes. Well, I know I'm putting you in this field, but I wanted to know whether if there's been a formal presentation on things related to HS2, you know, the high speed train link. Because in some occasions, this is also affecting properties, particularly down. I don't know about the south, but down the north. And we do have one of our properties that I think the HS2 is looking to acquire for the purpose of the train line. I don't know what you have to advise in that direction, or if you have professionals that we can contact in terms of seeking for advice in what to do.
Yeah, basically all you need is a surveyor.
Yeah.
And what I would recommend to you is sell to them, because under the compulsory purchase order, which is what I think they have been buying under, they have to buy if the market's gone down, they have to buy at the price that you paid for it. Plus, I think there's a nominal amount that goes on top, so you're not losing anything. I can't remember if it's something like 10% or something.
It's about 20%.
20%, and something like that. So, and to be honest, if you bought and you're getting 20% up on that, just do it. Get in and out quickly, but make sure you have a good surveyor who's getting a good value for you, because it'll be surveyor versus surveyor.
Yeah. There's a guy out of his contact. Obi is very good at that. He's been negotiating for some tenants for councils in London, against councils in London. And what Obi says is like it's surveyor to surveyor at times, because he's done it so much in London. At times, when he gets appointed and he calls a surveyor, he already knows the guy. The guy will say, "Okay, Obi, what do you think we should go for?" And then that's it. They settle it over in hopefully Ranjan's bar before they Ranji's bar rather, before they come over. So yeah, so surveyor to surveyor, they would agree between themselves what to go for. So appoint a surveyor to act on your behalf. Are there many properties? You can come to as a club.
It's one big commercial properties then we have a couple of businesses going on there. We have a school and we have a community center. So we have a few things going there, and I guess the big question for us is the school itself. That if they have to purchase the premises, then what happened to the school?
Yeah, and the school will have to. Is that a private school or a state school?
A private school.
Yeah, then they just have to relocate. But then if you're getting 20% above market value or more right now in this current market, I'm sure you can find a different location that might just be more suitable for the college.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think let's have a chat, and then we can put you in touch with Obi. Obi will be quite a useful contact for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good. So so I think I think we can now call it a day. Yes, Jay, this is I know you love this. I love this networking stuff. This gives one alive and buzzing. So guys,
Yeah.
thank you again, Jay, and I'll see you shortly in the morning, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, see you tomorrow morning, every morning, Monday to Sunday.
Yeah, so you guys, 9 o'clock tomorrow, if you're free in the morning, you just go on Jay's Facebook. Jay will be doing a live in the morning. So we all will meet again tomorrow morning if you do join us in the morning. Yeah, okay, Jay, we'll continue tomorrow.
Good night, Jay.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, all. Cheers.
Sam, you're finishing an hour early.
Yeah, exactly. So probably not be allowed at home. Not be allowed downstairs. Like, why have you come too early? Just
get back up.
No room for you. Or not expecting you to come so this quick. So no, I think no, they can come with me.
It was good today.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's been a busy day, but I'm just so it's been a great lockdown week because I said from last week we've almost sold like 3-4 properties and most of them without viewings. No one viewed them.
Okay.
Like, yes, let this continue. We want people to continue to buy this way. So and I've got lots of properties that come through that need to be valued.
Okay.
I've not had time to value them. I've been busy. So I can't wait to check out that valuation website as well to see what it's like.
Right.
Now, I forgot what I ask him if he's got a COVID-19 discount on his valuations. Yeah, if he's got any COVID-19 discounts. Oh yeah, no, it's COVID-19. Yeah, and of course,
call it a lockdown discount.
And actually, it's COVID-19 in the UK. What COVID number is it in the US? Is it 20 or 21? Yeah, I know. We mustn't make jokes about these serious issues, but we're not serious people, are we?
No, you gotta get life.
Yeah.
Not gonna get too serious because you know what? Nobody's getting out live anyway.
Absolutely. So we're not serious people. So yeah. So we can't joke about it. Yeah. Okay. I think we send everyone out. We can lock the door. If anyone is still sleeping, they can sleep. Then they get up in the morning tomorrow, as I said.
I'll see you tomorrow morning then.
Okay. I'll see you in the morning then.
Okay. Good night, Sam.
Bye. Good night. Bye.